Greetings traveler, I am Akira, a representative of the Twilight Society and the curator of these tales. Today, we will embark on a journey which is reincarnated into Secret Class Part 2. As always, if you want to support the creator of these works, their Patreon and story link will be in the description. Now, without further ado, buckle up and enjoy the story.
Chapter 16, Compromise. Chamiaisipiovu. A flash of thunder streaked overhead, its distant rumbling echoing off a moment later. The rain had yet to pour, but the signs of the incoming deluge were cracking the sky in silver rays. Mia held her smartphone aloft, camera pointed ahead. Hello everyone. This is my first video, and I'm Dae Ho, an aspiring football player, and today, Dae Ho smiled brightly in her direction. I'll be attempting to break the world record for crossbar volleys done in 1 minute. Ridiculous, was what Mia would have said if she hadn't witnessed her little brother's football prowess beforehand, but now she genuinely believed he could do it. The highest count recorded so far is 7. They both had looked it up. Some guy from some country had apparently received the award for that particular record. It was a very nondescript video, but the impact had been delivered well. Dae Ho had aligned 10 balls next to each other. She didn't know why he needed 10, when only 8 would have been fine. Perhaps it's for dramatic effect? She heaved a deep sigh. There was something wrong with her. For sure. Despite holding the camera and listening to him talk, she couldn't lock away the still fresh memories of their morning activity together. And the fact that he was so nonchalant about it, it upset her. Mia was expecting some kind of emotional upheaval between them, not this plain indifference. As if nothing happened. Yes, it might have been her plan, that of seducing, which was not really seducing, but more like guiding him into performing certain actions on her lady parts. But to her it was not a simple fling. It was more than that, yet she desperately buried the truth deep within her. Dae Ho took a couple of steps back, flashed a look at the camera, and went in for the shot. The ball wasn't packed with a lot of power, just enough for it to draw a curve in the air and make a perfect beeline for the goalpost. Mia made sure to film the trajectory. The ball hammered the crossbar, making its alloy rattle. And that's one. Dae Ho announced. Again, he retreated by a couple of steps, did his preparatory jog, and slammed the ball with the laces of his boot. Just like before, the sphere flew through the air and made its rapid descent into the crossbar. The aluminum rattled again. 2. It didn't matter how many times Mia witnessed it. She'd always be amazed at how someone, Dae Ho, in this case, could so casually say that he could land the ball on a very specific, thin, hard-to-hit surface. What particular movement did he do that made that prediction come true? It was not simply swinging your foot around, crossing your fingers, and hoping that the ball would go exactly where you intended. She really couldn't understand where his confidence stemmed from, or his monstrous talent, for that matter. In her opinion, anyone capable of socketing the ball into the net from that distance was already pretty good. But no, Dae Ho went on an exaggerated streak. He did something she didn't think anyone, who wasn't blessed by Lady Luck, would be able to. 3, 4, 5. 2 more to go, guys. Dae Ho wasn't particularly talkative, unlike many other YouTubers she knew of, but what he lacked in showmanship, he made up for with unmatched skill. Her camera precisely tracked the way the ball spun, arched, and softly tapped the crossbar, before it ricocheted off. Mia sighed, bottom lip caught between her teeth. What's this, Dae Ho? Who are you? Dae Ho, as if he sensed her thoughts, directed a meaningful look her way. Mia's heart throbbed, sending a jolt of desire through her body. Then he tore his gaze away, stomped his left foot forward, and with his right, let a missile fly off. It was almost anticlimactic at this point. There were no errors. No unnecessary movements. Each shot was infused with the perfect level of power. The ball never looked like it'd go over the bar or below it. Every time he battered his foot forward, Mia instinctively felt, because there was no other way to describe it, what the outcome would be. Like the previous attempts, the ball would follow a predetermined path, slowly lose a bit of its kinetic energy when it was closing in on its target, and let gravity guide it towards the crossbar. 6, 7, 8. Except that Dae Ho didn't stop there. With a small smile, he let loose another rocket. The crossbar quaked under that particular powerful shot. 9. Without losing momentum, he immediately went for the 10th. And the ball soared, gliding beautifully through the air like a bird. However, the aim was a bit off. The sphere ended up missing the bar by a measly few inches, and was rammed into the top left corner of the net. A gorgeous shot, no doubt, even if its purpose was left unaccomplished. Oh, Dae Ho chuckled. Disappointing. Disappointing? Mia wanted to scream. You just broke a fucking world record. She breathed in and out, putting a lid on her boiling emotions. Everything made so damn little sense as of late. Dae Ho. Her feelings. His sudden desire to improve. And his God-given talent with the ball. Seriously, that was out of nowhere. Thank you all for watching. Please, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I'll see you again. He paused, and Mia couldn't help but roll her eyes at his flair for the dramatic. Then a charming smile accompanied the rest of his sentence. In the next video. That was Mia's cue to stop recording. The moment she did so, Dae Ho's sunny demeanor immediately tapered off into an exhausted frown. It's so tiring to be all smiley and cheerful. Perhaps this was a bad idea. Mia huffed out a sigh as she pocketed her phone. Yeah, and I have no intention of being your tripod. Ha, I want you there for motivation. She crossed her arms, one eyebrow raised. Having a pretty girl nearby when I'm playing makes me want to give my 100% to impress them. It's a natural male instinct. So, were you impressed? Mia snorted and averted her gaze. It was a passable performance. She couldn't hold that haughty mask for long. A chuckle eventually burst through the cracks, and a smile overthrew the frown on her face. Never mind. You're really something else. Dae Ho laughed. I bet you're feeling all gooey and warm inside. He said as he hastened to retrieve the balls and stuff them inside the mesh bag they came with. Mia rolled her eyes, deciding not to deign a response to that particular comeback. She clicked her tongue. He's gotten so cocky. An earthy smell lingered on her nose. She looked up, where a pageant of clouds converged into dark swirls. A blue streak could be seen cleaving through the bulk. Then the distant roar followed. Dae Ho. Yes. Yes. I'm done. He pulled the laces of the bag and slung the strap over his shoulder. Wouldn't want you to get wet, right? That was really uncalled for. Mia shuddered as a vein of lightning split the clouds in twain. Fortunately, she was in the safety of her home, watching the raging weather from behind a window. The rain came in a relentless wave, drowning the world in cold needles and sharp winds. I like it. A voice spoke up. She raised a skeptical eyebrow in response. What do you mean? The weather. Dae Ho specified, which, frankly, still left a few questions unanswered. They were both in his room, and while Mia was staring out the window, he was transferring the video file from her smartphone to her laptop. It's relaxing, isn't it? Just you, a mug of hot chocolate, and the soothing sound of Mother Nature weeping. Mia walked up to his bed, sat on it, and hung one leg over the other. Her perfect, dainty foot dangled up and down. Why do you have to be so dramatic? Despite the bite in her tone, her lips curled up in genuine amusement. There is truly no trace of his old self left. He sighed. It's because I'm surrounded by women. This bastard. The smile immediately fell down. Dae Ho. His chair creaked as he turned around to look at her. He flashed her a smile, which didn't look apologetic in the slightest. You know I'm messing around with you, right? Right. Dae Ho turned back around and continued fiddling with the touchpad. The video came out really well. It just needs a bit of editing, and it'll be ready to be uploaded. Ain't that cause for celebration, sis? Is that video really important? Mia said, softly. She retreated further into his bed to lay face down, in a fashion that could have been considered innocently erotic. Her legs swung back and forth in the air, and because she was currently clothed in only an oversized brown sweater over her underwear, her alluring mounds curved up like soft hills. Why isn't he staring at me more? Well, Dae Ho briefly glanced back at her. It is. It's for our channel, after all. Our? Yes, our. He affirmed. This channel is as mine as it is yours. She tucked her mouth within her arms, hiding a smile. Have you come up with a name? Dae Ho nodded. Yep. I was thinking about Demia TV. Do you like it? That's actually good. Mia smirked, half of her face hidden behind a veil of silky hair. To think you'd include my name as well. You're touched, right? No way you aren't. He chuckled. Of course. She said without thinking. If you come here, I'll show you how touched I am. Mia froze. Even her legs stopped swinging. Ugh, stupid mouth. This time Dae Ho turned around and fully faced her, an amused smirk on his face. You can't help it, right? What? Please, don't make this any more embarrassing. You want another massage? Mia's heart knocked furiously against her chest. No way. No way. No way. What are you saying? Mia said. I didn't mean it like that. Is that so? Dae Ho hummed, spinning his chair around as he stared at her. Then, should we just ignore the elephant in the room and pretend everything's fine? But everything's fine. Mia snapped, not liking the way she sounded hurt. Say that one more time, but look at me when you do. Mia groaned, hiding the rest of her face in her arms. "What do you want me to say, Dae Ho?" For a while, he didn't say anything. Then, "It was a mistake, wasn't it?" Her heart thumped again, but for a different reason. She peeked out of her crossed arms and glared at him. "Don't you dare say that. I'm not cheap. I wouldn't do it with just anyone." Dae Ho's chair creaked in relief once it was freed of his weight. She stared as he sidled over to her. "We're stuck in quite a mess, aren't we?" Mia didn't even bother to deny it anymore. She just sighed. "We damn are." Then, he tilted his head, eyes boring into hers. "What do you suggest we do?" "What do we do? Why are you asking me, you fool?" Really, she was the last person in the world who could possibly have an answer to that. But if she left it to Dae Ho, chances were that he'd just ignore whatever tension was between them. Therefore, Dae Ho. Mia heaved a deep breath. A rush of heat came over to her cheeks. It was hard to say it. What she wanted but had to give up on. Let's do it, one last time. It was the compromise of an addict. Chapter 17, Heating Up. One last time? How many more one last time there'll be after this? I didn't want to further confuse her. And sex was a fast shortcut to confuse lust for love. I had been there before. Mia had a crush on me, and she was semi-scared of it. And it was not the romantic aspect of it that made her anxious, it was because she didn't know how to label me in her mind. Brother? Noah? Did it really matter? My sudden change piqued her interest. And from that interest, she saw someone that was far different from her silly brother. Someone who was a man, and not a babbling, inexperienced schoolboy. Then came the physical attraction. The stolen glimpses. The subtle hints. And in a spiraling morning of madness, we had sex. I knew that it wouldn't end well for either of us. However, Mia was so unrealistically perfect that I couldn't resist. She was the embodiment of a man's primal desires. I didn't regret it, mind you. I just didn't want to poison our relationship with that dangerous chemical. And it was obviously doing more harm to her than it was to me. Dae Ho? Mia breathed out. She turned around, spreading her limbs all over my bed. That mane of sun-kissed locks fell around her head like a crown, truly befitting of her beauty. She curled one knee up, and from that position, I had an eyeful of what lay beneath her sweater. God had given me a new lease on life, yet in this dangerous game, I was about to forfeit it to this voracious man-eater that was my sister. Mia. I started, and she dragged her fingers across my wrist. I don't think that this is going to make the situation any better. Good. Douse out the heat with some cold, hard logic. A blush spread across her cheeks and nose. I know. Her fingers sailed up, leaving goosebumps in its path to my arm. But I still have to teach you a few things. That's why, one last time, to make sure you're well prepared to woo a woman and make her happy. That didn't make any sense. But, as I had already learned, common sense was something everyone lacked here. At least when it came to intimacy. You want to teach me? I chuckled. In this pretend play, she wanted to justify her feelings and actions as some sort of twisted teaching game. If that's the role you want to take on, shouldn't you dress up for it? Mia smirked. That nurse costume is the only outfit I have. Too bad. Her fingers drew circles on my skin, before it glided back down my wrist, where she tugged it impatiently. Come on, Dae Ho. First lesson, as a man, you should take the lead. And what's the second? I asked, playing along. One step at a time, champ. Well, she spread her knees further apart, and the look she gave me could have smothered a whale of its oxygen. As a simple, somewhat normal human, the effect was devastating. I'm waiting. We're not alone, like earlier. I whispered. Mia smirked, biting the corner of her bottom lip. Then we gotta be fast. Alright, let's add another stupid decision to the list. I turned a bit, until my knees sunk into the mattress. Slowly, I paddled over to Mia. She moved her arms above her head, as a gesture of invitation, of absolute submission. She tilted her chin to the side. Just a little. Enough to show me her perfect jawline and that creamy, swan neck. My heart beat hard and fast. Aren't you going to take off the sweater? I asked, my tone low and mellow. Of course, in this dance, both partners had to be naked, so I hastened to take off my own clothes as well. With a shuddering breath, Mia's fingers curled around the bottom hem of her sweater, and with a swift pull, she slipped it off. Her gorgeous, twin globes bounced up and down. Inch by inch, I strayed closer to this ripe, forbidden fruit. I placed a hand on her knee, my fingers playing a melody on her skin as they glided up, to her thigh. Dae Ho. This morning, I didn't dally long enough to appreciate the aesthetics of Mia's body. But damn, those thighs. I'd gladly go through death once more just for the opportunity to put my face between those warm, thick mounds. The smooth softness of her skin made the passage of my fingers to her inner core easier. Mia squirmed a little when my hand crawled deeper and deeper into her sweet spot. There was no need to jump straight into the action. Teasing was part of the game as much as sex was. I knee paddled forward, closing the rest of the distance, and snuggled my face between her thighs. A fruity scent of body wash wafted into my nose, and the closer I got to her honeypot, the warmer the scent got. Mia instinctively flexed her legs, clamping her ankles around my shoulders. I parted the thin, white strip of cotton that obstructed me from my prize. I stared at my reward. A beautiful, pink slit stared back at me. There was not a single thread of hair down there. And it was not because she had shaved it. It was all natural. A womanly, heady scent lingered at the tip of my nose. I parted the moist folds a bit, and stuck my tongue out, tentatively running a lap across it. Mia's legs tightened around my neck. HNNN. She whined. Dae Ho. She placed her hands on my head, trying to bury my face deeper into her pussy. I obliged, and closed the short gap between us. My tongue flicked, skimming from the bottom all the way to the top in one fluid movement. Mia secreted more love juices, and I lapped everything off. HNNN. Mia arched her back, eyes heavy-lidded and unfocused. Oh, Dae Ho. With the tip of my tongue, I grazed the sensitive nub under its pocket of pink flesh. Naturally, that caused Mia to sing more lovely music. Her voice was a strained mule, almost as if she was on the verge of crying. My strokes were feathery light, and I made sure to cover each and every corner of her snatch. I brought her up and down the peak of pleasure. And I did it expertly enough that I made her taste the ecstasy, but never made her come. Dae Ho, please. Mia cried. HNN. Please. I pulled away, my lips and chin dripping with her sweet nectar. No, why? She stared at me, sweat running down her face as she panted. There were even some tears welling up in the corner of her eyes. Dae Ho. What is the second step, Mia Nuna? I asked, feigning confusion. Please. This is so complicated. I'm so clueless when it comes to sex. I raked a hand through my hair. Mia Nuna. What am I supposed to do with this thing? I wondered, wrapping a hand around my thick pole of meat. It throbbed expectantly, eager to do its job. Dae Ho. Mia babbled incoherently. You have to put it inside here. She reached her fingers down and further spread the folds of her sodden cunt. Is that so? I smirked, aiming the crimson head towards its weeping target. I pinned one hand on the left side of Mia, while with the other, I slowly guided my dick inside her. She hooked her legs around my waist, and her arms around my neck. You really want it that bad, Mia Nuna? HNN, yes. Dae Ho. Somehow, Mia dragged a smirk to her face. Don't you want to do it with me? She whispered hotly, nibbling my earlobe. I shivered. The pleasant tingles made my cock ache to be coddled by Mia's hole. I slanted my waist forward, and my cock head was smoothly swallowed by her inner walls. The amazing feeling heightened as I stowed more of my throbbing length into the tight passage. The muscular grip of her cunt wrapped around my junior, sucking it in and rubbing its wet walls all over my shaft. HNNNN. Mia cried out, tongue lolling out. Her limbs tightened their hold on my back, clinging onto me like a boa constrictor. That ended up lessening the wiggle room I had in her desperate embrace. Still, I managed to load my hips back and deliver that naughty pussy a well-deserved thrust. A wave of ecstasy flooded my senses. Fuck. Having sex with her was an otherworldly experience. The constant feedback of intense pleasure was something that I had never felt before. Dae Ho. Mia called out my name, letting it hang off her drooling tongue in a way that crumbled what little mental defense I had. I brought my face closer to her. There was no semblance of sobriety to be found in her inebriated world. I couldn't resist, so I leaned my lips closer. Mia averted her gaze. Vous vacante? Dae Ho. She somehow squeezed those words through her heavy breathing. No, kissing. And why not? I whispered. The notion didn't make any sense. And I wanted to taste those lips so damn bad. You didn't protest when I was kissing your pussy. That's different. I pulled my cock back, and then slammed it back in. HNNN. I clenched my teeth. Her tight canal was milking me towards my release. Come on, Mia Nuna. You should teach me how to kiss as well. Mia looked at me. You should do it with someone you really like. But I like you. She bit her bottom lip, a bit flustered. Why you, HNNN? Don't, like me that way, ha. I panted, my waist rocking back and forth, in tune with our moans. It doesn't matter, you're still special to me. I'd rather you be the first than someone else, who I might not even like. Dae Ho. I silenced her with a kiss, and because her tongue was out, flopping around like a writhing tentacle, I urgently invited it in my mouth. She was caught off guard, as I was when the tang of chocolate and vanilla overwhelmed my taste buds. Honestly, I expected her to be a bit sloppy. So suddenly did I kiss her that I was sure I'd have the reins of control. I was wrong. Mia was quick to accept the challenge. And she did so with a masterful stroke of her tongue, twisting and turning it around mine before she swept it towards the roof of my mouth. She was not conservative with her drool. It flooded my mouth, coating our dancing tongues, and leaving me in a trance. HNNN. She unlocked the hands around my neck, and brought them to the back of my head. I momentarily halted my pounding, and snaked my hands under her ass. I heaved her up while I leaned back, a little, just so she could straddle me. Her breast squished into my chest. And in all of this, her lips never left mine. Chapter 18, Ridin' and Dirty. A flimsy ribbon of drool trickled down our chin and slicked between her cleavage and my chest. I contorted my tongue, pushing hers back into her mouth, where the slimy battle for dominance continued. The clicking of saliva being smacked echoed off in my ears. God, it was such a delightful sound. Mia clawed at my shoulders, arching her back slightly. As a result, her flaxen curls fell over my face. And while I tasted the sweetness of her tongue, my nose was submerged in a field of flowers. She hoisted herself up a bit, leveraging herself on my shoulders, and then lowered her but backed down. HNNN. She cried out, dislodging her mouth from mine. Naturally, I was not done sucking her tongue, so I immediately captured her lips between mine. Mia gasped, and her hot breath rolled right into my mouth. Our tongues resumed their passionate wrestling, entwining and sweeping over each other in a flowing puddle of drool. Shit was getting so messy, and I loved every minute of it. Her tongue work got progressively sloppy as the hazy swirl of pleasure clouded her mind. Honestly, I was not faring any better. I had years of experience to fall back on, and even that was proving to be rather pointless. The woman in my arms was a bona fide sex creature. She was born to entice, to pick apart your soul, bend you at the knee, and knight you into the highly sought-after role of mindless simp. We both pulled away to breathe. Mia bounced up and down my cock, muttering expletives while calling out my name. She hung her head back. Her beautiful neck was exposed, so I attacked it. I brushed my lips over the sensitive skin, tending to a particular spot under her right ear, before I slid down, where I licked and nibbled the hollow of her neck. Leaving a hickey there was a very, very bad idea. But the thought of adding my signature to this white, unmarked sheet was impossible to overcome. I bit into the flesh, sucking on it. HNNNNN. Mia's nails sunk into my shoulders. Any more than that, and my blood would be added to the mess of fluids clinging to our bodies. When my mouth finally released her, a beautiful set of teeth marks was enthroned on a wet, bruising circle. It would gain a deeper color overnight, and tomorrow Mia would find herself forced to hide it. And once she notices, I'll be hiding as well. My hands glided down, resting on her bouncing butt cheeks. I thrust my hips upward, meeting her downward bounce halfway. HNNNN. Shit, the different angle was hitting all the right spots. Her breasts swayed in a hypnotizing samba. They were so close to my face as well. Therefore, I did what any other respectable man would do. I swirled my tongue around one of the cherries. Mia replied by tightening her arms around my head. I caught her nipple between my teeth, nibbling softly, tweaking the pink nub while my tongue covered the areolae in warm strokes. Dae Ho, she whimpered, bouncing hard and fast on my lap. At some point, a focused point of tension might have built up within her, for her movements became wild and desperate. Her hands, which had been clasping at my hair, moved down to my shoulders. She pushed me, leaning forward as she did so. I groaned as the sudden change of positions did wonders to my throbbing mast. My back sunk into the mattress, while Mia mounted me, hands sliding up and down my chest, her nails leaving white scratches that would no doubt redden soon. Dae Ho, oh God, it feels. Mia whined as she ground against me. So, good. You like it, A familiar pressure twisted my stomach. She smirked, propping herself up before she slammed her lap back down. My cock was jammed all the way home, where it belonged. The snug embrace of her pussy massaged my shaft with the slightest movement. Pearls of sweat ran down Mia's face, glimmering beautifully against her flushed skin. Once she was adjusted to her new position, she began to ride me. It was slow at first, a sensual dance to savor the way my fuckstick widened her inner walls, rubbing and throbbing in its passage. Then she picked up the pace, her grinding motion gained a little bouncing, especially when she elevated herself a little, knees bent and hands resting on my legs. I had a perfect view of my cock, coated in her juice, being swallowed in and out of her delighted cunt. Mia's moans were a sensual consonance. She was very vocal, and very expressive too. I knew she was riding up the staircase to heaven when she stuck her tongue out, eyes misty and face contorted in pure pleasure. Dae Ho, Mia, Nuna. I was close. Extremely close. I had to pull out now, or I wouldn't be able to stop once I crossed a certain point. I'm about to. Me too, Dee, don't come inside me. Thank God she was sober enough to make the right decision. I was so out of it my attempt would have been half-hearted, at best. Hun. She screamed so hard she had to lunge her mouth to my shoulder, and bite it to stifle the sound. Her thighs quivered, as did her voice. I winced in pain. Mia's climax had fogged her sense of control, and her jaw was applying a lot of pressure on my flesh. I would no doubt walk out of this with a nasty bruise. Mia, I warned. The sudden clenching of her inner walls was milking me far beyond the point of return. However, she was still riding down the crest of her orgasm for her brain to function properly. Oh God. Fuck. I growled as the knot in my stomach came undone. My muscles contracted and flexed, making me freeze for an agonizingly long moment. The pleasure overrode my common sense, and in that brief instant, all I wanted was to fill up Mia's naughty pussy with my cum. And so I did. I thrust upward, to ensure my bulging cockhead was sheathed as deep as it could go. And then the dam broke. A burst of semen spewed out. I nearly blanked out when the pleasure reached its zenith, before it slowly tapered down with the second and third bursts. Mia's tongue lolled around as she held on to me. Dae Ho. She whimpered, and really, seeing her so defenseless and filthy with our fluids, I couldn't resist myself. I inched forward and brushed my lips against hers. This time there was no resistance. Our tongues found each other amidst locked lips and clacking teeth. She breathed into me, inhaling and exhaling my own oxygen and then giving it back to me. Her fingers roamed the back of my head, clasping hair and sinking her nails into my scalp. The pain was momentary. The memory of her passion would last forever. Mia swept her tongue over my upper lip, while I caught her bottom one. Slowly, we pulled away to breathe, a fading trail of drool bridging our lips together. We stared at each other, our eyes taking everything in, from our sweaty faces to the blissful afterglow of our lovemaking. And then she averted her gaze, climbing off of me. She parted her thighs a bit, and my jizz trickled down her folds, pooling up in my white sheets. My heart lurched. Mia Noona. I came inside you. I knew very well what that entailed. No protection. No peace. I went in raw, and didn't pull out. Mia heaved a deep, strained sigh. It's fine. It's a safe day. I closed my eyes, feeling a bit of life returning to me. And now there was an awkward stretch of silence. Dae Ho. Mia started, choking on her feelings, yet her brave front never cracked. I'm sorry, it's my fault. I shouldn't have. She held her head in her hands, fingers running through her hair. I couldn't leave her like that. If she drowned in regret, it'd only harm her self-image and our relationship. I knew that us fucking would make things abnormal, such was the fate of secret lovers. So I scooted next to her and placed a hand on her back, drawing soothing circles on her skin. I had to tread carefully here. She looked at me. Why is it your fault? Mia Noona, you didn't force. There was not a single time when I felt compelled to do any of those things with you. It was consensual. I keep telling myself that we shouldn't, yet. Mia trailed off with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You were right. This ain't making the situation any better. Look. I sighed. Things might not make sense right now, but I told you, and I'll tell you again. I like you. You're my sister, my partner, and... I nuzzled her chin with my thumb. My dirty little secret. I value your companionship much more than what your body can offer me. If you want to stop having sex with me, that's fine. I'll accept it. But in no way will I accept you suddenly leaving because shit is getting a little risque between us. Dae Ho. Mia bit her bottom lip. My thumb shifted a little, sliding over her left cheek. I want you to be there when our channel gets popular. I want you to be there when I make it into a pro league. I want you to be there when I become rich and famous. And I promise you that the first title I win, I'll dedicate it to you. Chapter 19, Limitless. Mia had to cooperate with Dae Ho to make her secret escape. It was not deep into the night, so the hallways had a higher risk of being more trafficked. Or so they thought. Eunha, as per usual, was hyper-focused on her household chores. Yonggu was playing golf downstairs. As for Suah, she was likely to be cooped up in her room. Dae Ho still insisted on erring on the side of caution. So, he opened the door, quietly, looked both ways, and when the perimeter was secured, he gave her the green light. Mia tiptoed her way out, not forgetting to pinch her little brother's face. Rude. He mumbled while nursing his cheek. She smirked, winked at him, and then scuttled back to her room. The hurried pitter-patter of her bare feet faded once she found safety beyond the door. She closed it, leaning into its frame to support the weight of her body, and her emotions. Her thoughts were in disarray. Her heart was like a woodpecker chucking away. Her lungs were continuously short on oxygen. All of the blood congested in her cheeks. If it were a cliché animation, steam would be coming out of her face. Mia brought a finger up to her lips, tracing the soft edges and the drool smeared across its corners. Dae Ho's warmth still lingered there. There's no way this will be the last time. She was being honest earlier. None of that shit should have happened. Everything should have stayed platonic and problem-free. A chaste relationship between siblings. However, as Mia recalled Dae Ho's words, she couldn't still her heart. He said, "No strings attached," and then proceeded to cover her in a fucking web of it. Mia groaned, suddenly reminded of the gift Dae Ho had left on her neck. TCH, bastard. She ran a hand across the welt, fingers rubbing against the teeth marks. I should have left one on him too. She wrinkled her nose, feeling an unpleasant stickiness between her legs. Ah, right, he had marked her down there too. As much as her body was caked in bodily fluids, she couldn't help but smile. The air between Dae Ho and Mia had become more breathable? Was that a good way to describe it? She didn't know, but she was happy nonetheless. Of course, the sexual tension was always there, and likely always will, but Mia didn't feel like she had to walk on tiptoes anymore when it came to expressing her emotions or her moods. The only problem was keeping everything under wraps. Mia didn't want to hide under his bed every time someone came looking for him, which turned out to be mostly her mother. With that train of thought railing through her mind, she headed to the bathroom. As night drew on, instead of a sweater, Mia opted for some light clothes. A tank top and dolphin shorts. She hopped on her bed, turned around, and swung her legs in the air as she browsed through her notifications. There were way too many of them. Usually, she'd be thumbing through each one of them, but it'd only delay her real purpose. Therefore, with a swipe of her finger, she deleted everything, and opened her KakaoTalk. The screen flashed and a list of contacts showed up. Dae Ho. Her finger hovered over the icon. She had given him her old smartphone since she didn't use it anymore. A young man like him couldn't be without one. That fool had broken his twice already. Mia tapped on his contact, and a barren chat overtook the screen. Should I text him? She didn't want to be too pushy or clingy. The optimal outcome would be for him to be clinging all over her, but with this new Dae Ho, it didn't seem like it'd happen. Her fingers moved on their own. Hey. He didn't reply. Actually, he didn't even log in to see the text. Maybe it was a bad idea. And as the minutes passed, the frustration grew more and more, twisting and wrapping into a ball of regret in the pit of her stomach. What the fuck is wrong with me? Not even half a day had gone by since they had sex, twice, and she was already seeking him out again. The flimsy excuses she told herself didn't hold water. She hated that she was feeling that way. It stung, because Dae Ho's feelings were vague. There was no clear answer. She appreciated his honesty, but his words and actions didn't match. He said, more like implied, he wanted to keep things casual. Then he said he really, really liked her. And when he held her, when he comforted her, Mia felt like she meant the whole world to him. A chirping melody went off, a faint vibration accompanying it. She immediately unlocked her phone. A new message popped up right under hers. Hey, if you want to talk, you can come over. Would she come across as desperate if she replied way too fast? He made her wait 5 whole minutes. As a rule of thumb, she should make him wait at least that much. Fuck that. She was too impatient to get a conversation going. Nah, I'm in my bed. Too comfy to get up. Should I come over then? No. Stay there. Why? Just stay there. Thinking _emoji. A smile flashed across her face. What are you up to anyway? Working out a little. What? You're always working out. But you like it, don't you? Upside _down smile. Mia bit her bottom lip as she spammed a row of little faces with steam coming out of their nose. Haven't you had enough exercise for a day? Zipper _mouth. I don't know. I feel like I could go for another round, and another, and another. Despite her best efforts to stop it, a blush flared up on her cheeks. Liar. Devil _face. Maybe I should get some yoga in too? She smiled, tapping a sticker on the list below. A blushing bear flashed under her message with a popped sound. Copycat LOL. I've been doing this shit way before you. A crying, a peach sticker sprung up. Mia rolled her eyes. She sunk her face further into the pillow, staring at the now silent chat. A question churned in her mind. It was one that had been shelved away ever since she had given him a massage. It was not out of choice, but of circumstance. Now, however, was a perfect time. Her thumb scampered across the keyboard. Say, what did you and Mom talk about the other day? Contrary to the previous interaction, his answer didn't come instantly. Just when her suspicions were growing to alarming levels, a message popped up. She was concerned. About what? About me. She wanted to make sure I was fine. You know how she is, she's been overthinking a lot. Weren't you also the same? You almost tore my door off its hinges, haha. Anyway, everything's alright now, so don't worry. That made sense, yes. Mia heaved a deep sigh as she sorted out her jumble of thoughts. I was not concerned. I was suspicious. Sure. The conversation went on for another half an hour before both of them called it quits. Mia turned off the lights and lay there, phone in her hand. Mia might have said she was sleepy, but honestly, she could probably stay up for another couple of hours. Due to very recent events, if she closed her eyes right now, her mind would wander to certain memories that would only have a particular effect on her body. Whatever. Sleep would beckon her on its own. With that new motivation in mind, Mia hopped on YouTube and scrolled through her feed. Star operator. I've made a few more discoveries about this body. A seemingly endless well of stamina was not its most impressive trait. No, far from it. The first peculiarity, I came to find out, by accident, mind you, was that I had a higher pain tolerance. A way higher tolerance, in fact. But even that could be, somehow, attributed to having gone through death once. It was not as if there was a scientific explanation, backed by solid evidence, behind it. Maybe it had an effect on my mind. I didn't feel any different, really. Was it all subconscious? The second peculiarity was the sudden spike in strength I had. The muscles of this body were growing exceedingly fast and strong. I thought I was an ectomorph, which was why I increased my calorie intake. The first results should not be showing up this soon. It'd take time and dedication, a lot of dedication, to get where I was in my past life. The third peculiarity was my mind-body coordination. Whenever I balanced the ball on my feet, or attempted a flashy skill, like the hocus pocus, each set of movements was carried out with the maximum efficiency and accuracy. There was not a single time where I thought, I'm about to mess this up. No, my feet would perfectly translate every command given with no delay or stuttering. I was stronger, faster, more vigorous, resistant, and skilled. And so I wondered, what were the limits to this body? How far could I push it before I hit an insurmountable wall? Would there be any walls in my path to the absolute peak anyway? Because I knew that, with my experience and talent, coupled with this blessed physical form, there'd be no stopping me from conquering the football world. Not only football. I could branch out, couldn't I? Sure, I wanted to focus on one thing at a time, but trying out a few different sports would be beneficial, even if I decided not to make a career out of them. The sun's harsh glares made my morning run harder to bear, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. I was slightly short-winded, but otherwise, I didn't feel like I had just run over 10 laps around the neighborhood. I could go for more, but I did promise Gobang I'd drop by his house. I'm not even that interested in drones. Still, after what he said last time, I would feel extremely bad if I stopped associating with him. Like it or not, he was my friend. Maybe he'd grow on me. Maybe not. I had no intention of forcing a friendship between us, but the least I could do right now was to give him a chance. Chapter 20, Work in Progress. After treading through a field of sunflowers, I stopped in front of a green gate. Bad color choice. It looked horrendous. Gobang? I called out. I'm here. It was not my home, so I kept my tone at a moderate level. A minute passed, and my patience was slowly running out. Wasn't there an intercom system somewhere around? I shook my head, placing my hand on the green bars, and tentatively pushed it. If it didn't work, I'd be heading straight back home. Screw his drone. The gate whined as it opened, exposing a narrow gap for me to slip in. This feels like I'm breaking in. I looked around. Left to right. There was no trace of Gobang, or anyone in general. That was true until my eyes landed on a lithe figure sleeping peacefully on the porch. I blinked, taking in her stocking feet and her flowing pale legs. Her white dress, originally sewn to be rather modest and innocent, looked very indecent right now. It fluttered a little due to the fan sweeping air around. Everything below the skirt section was revealed. I hope this is not how you stole her panties, Gobang. This woman was his sister, Yuhyang. With her innocent expression and beauty, she looked like a maiden of some faraway kingdom. Why wasn't Gobang this good-looking? The poor guy even had a receding hairline. Yuhi's dark hair was splayed all around her head, a few stray bangs falling over her forehead and eyes. Despite my presence, she was still blissfully absorbed in her dreamscape. She breathed in and out, never once stirring, even after I purposefully made my footsteps louder. I wanted to alert her of my arrival. Unfortunately, she didn't rouse from her sleep. I sighed and quietly made my way over. The fact that she was not a complete stranger but someone I was acquainted with made me feel less uncomfortable. I crouched down, maintaining a respectful distance between us. PSSST, Yuhi. I leaned closer. PSSST. She grunted, eyes cracking open. And once she detected me, she sprung up, hand over her mouth. Dae Ho? Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. I apologized, taking a few steps back in case she felt defenseless. I smiled pleasantly and continued. I came here to hang out with Go-Bong. Is he here? Oh. Yuhi blinked, a somewhat flustered blush tinting her cheeks as she smiled. You're here to play with him? My smile twitched. Play is an exaggerated way to put it. He wanted to show me his drone. Her smile widened. Come in, she said with an upturn of her eyes. He went out to repair his drone. I couldn't turn down such a beautiful smile, so I accepted her invitation. After prompting me to wait a couple of minutes, Yuhi skipped inside the house to fetch 2 cans of orange juice. She placed them on a wide plate, which currently stood between us. Yuhi swung her legs over the edge of the porch. It's so hot today, she said conversationally. I wish I was at the beach. She sighed dreamily, running a hand through those flowing, ebony locks. I quietly sipped the cold drink. I wish I was at home. I mumbled. Huh? Nothing. I tilted the can all the way up, swallowing the last mouthful of the juice. So, when do you think Go-Bong will be back? Yuhi tapped her chin with a thoughtful frown. It should be soon, haha, the repair shop is not far from here. A vague answer. Not entirely unexpected. What followed next was a whole minute of uncomfortable silence. Yuhi glanced at me. Those honey-glazed eyes flicked to mine before they made a sudden descent down my body. I was wearing a slim, black shirt. The fabric clung to my chest like a second layer of skin, comfortable, light, and stylish. Naturally, it had the desired effect of emphasizing the toned muscles. So, she averted her gaze. What have you been up to? I idly played with the empty can. You know, the usual. I shrugged. I've been paid 5,000 Korean wons in cold cash to murder an important Japanese Yakuza's member with a fishing rod and cheese wire. Can you believe it? Cheese white. That stuff doesn't even work properly. At least I got an ice cream out of it. Silver linings, eh? What? Yuhi was mortified. Why, you're joking, right? Now Yuhi. He stared at her seriously. She gulped when I let the silence hang on for more than was necessary. Of course I'm joking. I chuckled. She loosened a sigh of relief, hand on her chest. Then, once she realized I just made a fool of her, her lips puckered into a pout. That was not nice. I'm a very believable storyteller, aren't I? Yuhi tried to hold back a giggle, unfortunately it broke right through her frown. She held a fist over her mouth. Her peal of laughter slowly subsided, leaving the remains of a smile in its place. You've changed. That's what happens when you try to make a killing as a hitman. I leaned back on my elbows and smiled. Now, I'm just a wandering street artist hoping to make it big in the football world. Oh? She cocked her head sideways. There was genuine interest in her eyes. Football? I nodded, fixing a playful smile on my face as I dusted invisible dirt off my shoulder. Oh yes. And, between you and me. I leaned closer to her and whispered conspiratorially. I'm quite good. Yuhi blinked. A cute, rosy hue throned on her cheeks. Oh, is that so? She coughed. I never thought you'd be into that, of all things. And then she not so discreetly stole a glimpse of my chest. When I tried to lock her eyes with mine, she immediately averted her gaze and started kicking the air, pretending innocence. Yeah, who would have thought? Me, a football player? I curled one knee up. Crazy, right? That's not true. Yuhi smiled, exposing a perfect row of pearly whites. I believe you can accomplish anything you set your mind on. Take my brother, for example. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed, yet he wants to become a computer engineer. And I wholeheartedly believe he can do it. Just as I believe you can become a football player. Believing in your dream is the first step to achieving it, Dae Ho. I was a bit thrown off by her honesty. Those were not empty words, spoken to flatter, but a genuine acknowledgement born from the depths of her heart. Those hazel eyes of hers belied no deceit. That is really sweet of you, Yuhi. She tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Really? A breeze decided that it was the right time to sweep through her hair. The sunlight crowned her delicate, pale face. In that brief moment, she looked simply magnificent. How am I supposed to remain sane when every woman in my life is so unrealistically gorgeous that it doesn't scientifically make sense? I had already figured that this world's benchmark for beauty was off the roof compared to the one I come from. I wondered how high the crime rate in this world was. A woman's beauty could be a trigger for a man to forsake morality and tread down a dangerous road. Dae Ho, are you okay? You're spacing out. Yuhi's concerned, sweet voice brought me back to reality. Sorry, just been thinking about what you said earlier. She tilted her head, a little confused yet a little earnest. It looked like she was genuinely happy that I took her words into such deep consideration. Thank God that she didn't have me as keen intuition when it came to unearthing the truth from a pile of bullshit. You know, he started in a small voice. I'd really like to see you play sometime. I looked at her. A smile blossomed on my face. That can be arranged. Then, the gates wailed as their non-lubricated joints were put under stress. Go Bong walked in, a box secured in his arm. Dae Ho, he chirped as soon as he saw me. You're here. Haha, sorry. I didn't think it'd take me so long. He scratched the back of his head. I waved him off as I climbed to my feet. It's fine. I had a lovely conversation with your sister. Haha, is that so? Go Bong alternated a look between me and Yu-hee, who looked a little embarrassed. I walked up to him and patted his shoulder. Come on. Let me see what this toy of yours can do. It's not a toy, he mumbled. I turned back and glanced at Yu-hee. She smiled at me, and in return, I gave her a cheeky two-fingered salute. She giggled. And then we walked out. It's not bad, but it's not entertaining either. I watched as Go Bong fingered the commands, and the drone whizzed back and forth in the air, like a swift dragonfly. Hee hee. This is the latest model, Vanguard 1. Go Bong said enthusiastically. I sat down on the swaying grass. You seem to be good at controlling him. The beautiful, streamlined drone hummed as it flew around us. Yup. Go Bong laughed. It's only hard at the beginning. You just need a little practice. You'll get the hang of it in no time. Is that so? He continued flying the drone until it ran out of battery. Then he picked it up from the ground, packed it back inside its box, and handed it to me. There you go. You can take it home and practice. Why does he have to smile like that? I had the box in his hands. Go Bong. Huh? The smile never faded. I don't think I'll have time to practice with it. Go Bong tilted his head, his hand slowly retracting. Oh, haha, that's fine. No problem. The smile on his face was a little forced. He was trying hard to be a good friend, yet I was blowing him off like that. I felt guilty. I'm his only friend. I had to remind myself that I couldn't simply cut people off because of my mismatched identity. Both of us used to be bullied, him more than me because he was different looking. He deserved a shot to do better, and I wanted to lend him a hand. Before the awkward silence could stretch on, I got up, dusting my behind. Go Bong. Listen. Perhaps the seriousness of my tone scared him, for he visibly tensed. Still, he kept up the smile. Silly guy. What would you say if I suggested you start working out with me? We could go jogging in the morning. There was nothing I could do for his inherent looks, but he could definitely trim down the baby fat on his face and the flab on his belly. A wardrobe change would also elevate his overall appearance, if only a little. If he had enough money to buy a fucking drone, then some expensive clothes shouldn't be an issue. There was a lot to work on, after all. Work out? Go Bong gawked. It was as if he had never considered partaking in such an endeavor before. Then his eyes trailed down the contours of my arms and chest. Is that what you've been doing? I nodded. I wanted to change, so I did. I am still doing, actually. For some reason, a sad expression came over his face. But there was nothing wrong with you before, why change? Because I was not happy. Go Bong, are you happy with yourself? Please, be honest. It's just you and me right now, and I really, really want to help you out. He laughed awkwardly, scratching the back of his head. Haha, Dae Ho, thank you, but there's no way I can change. It's impossible. And then he averted his gaze, his smile faltering. I mean, look at me, how could I possibly change? If he kept that mindset up, he'd be forever stuck on the cocoon stage. I couldn't allow that. I also used to think like you. I've tried working out on and off, hoping that a couple of weeks of half-hearted effort would turn me into this strong, perfect man. I looked in the mirror every morning, desperately hoping for a change. Never saw one. Nothing. So I stopped, resigning myself that I'd never change. But you, I interrupted him. Yes, I look different now. And you think I do because I sat around doing absolutely nothing? If the change doesn't start from here. I pointed at my head. Then you'll never improve. It's not an easy process, nothing worth working on ever is. It's painful. Some days you won't want to do it. Some others you won't even be able to move. And it's on those days that you have to push yourself harder. Go Bong. I projected my beliefs into him, hoping for a spark of change. If you allow me, and if you believe in me, in half a year, I'll turn you into a whole different person. I? Go Bong hesitated, clinging onto his drone box for dear life. His jaw was stiff, muscles tensed. I could almost see the gears churning and turning in his head. Dae Ho, can I think about it? I closed my eyes. He laughed, awkward as ever. I'll contact you once I make up my mind, haha, okay? And released a deep sigh. Chapter 21, It's Between the Lines. Nas Beobebasha. The sound of cutlery clinking against the plates rang out. Breakfast was in full swing, and the whole family was at the table. It was a rare occurrence. "It's good to see you in the morning, Sua." Yang-gu flashed a smile towards his youngest daughter. "Why don't you wake up early from now on?" The suggestion was immediately brushed off. "I didn't wake up early. I stayed up all night." Sua replied in a monotone. Unha sighed internally as she tucked a chopstickful of food into her mouth. She had tried many times to curb that unhealthy habit of hers, but Sua was unyielding. Well, she consoled herself that, once school recommenced, she'd go back to normal. Hopefully. "Oh." Yang-gu scratched the back of his head, his smile turning a little flustered. As usual, he didn't attempt to correct that behavior. "I see, haha, you must be tired." She ignored him. A beat of silence ensued. "Honey." Unha turned to her husband. "Yes?" He didn't even spare her a glance. "I have to go to the city today. I have a meeting with Mr. Kim, and I'll be back tomorrow." "Oh, all right." It was an emotionless transaction of words. Yang-gu continued speaking between one chopstickful and another. "They really want to talk to me in person." He said he would. Unha tuned him out, his voice an annoying white static in her mind. At this point, they were just going through the motions. The passage of time diluted her anxiety over his secret trysts. In a natural, almost instinctive sweep of her eyes, her gaze was drawn to Dae Ho. His shoulders had broadened, straining against his shirt. The continuous morning runs, under the scorching sun, thawed off what little baby fat he had on his face. Now his features were sharper, more prominent, like a sculpted slab of stone perfectly hammered and chiseled by an artist. "I wonder if he's taking care of himself properly." It was a mother's prerogative to be concerned over her son's, even if he was adopted, health. "He's probably doing fine." He didn't give her any reasons to be worried, after all. His sudden maturity dispelled the clouds of doubt. There was no need for her to interfere anymore. Just as Unha was about to tear her gaze away, Dae Ho tilted his head up, his eyes hooking hers before they could scamper away, like a fish caught in a net. His eyes were very expressive at the moment, prodding hers with a silent question and a smile of encouragement. She returned the smile with one of her own. And then he twisted his face, scrunching it up into this goofy expression that it caught her off guard. A laugh broke through her lips. She immediately raised a hand up, hoping to contain the bursts. He smiled victoriously. Unha's eyes sparkled. A fair, slender arm suddenly wrapped around Dae Ho's shoulder, pulling him. Unha's eyes veered to the right, where Mia had this huge, suggestive grin splattered across her face. She tightened her hold on Dae Ho, making him crook all over her side of the table. Naturally, Dae Ho took everything in stride and only offered Mia an easygoing smile. "You shouldn't bully your little brother," he said in an attempt to quell his sister's sudden hyperactivity. "And what you gonna about it?" Mia's voice bordered on a growl. Unha would have been seriously concerned if it wasn't for the glimmering, teasing light in her oldest's eyes. "They're just messing around. Something like this." Dae Ho whispered, his lips arching into an innocent smile. Unha noticed some movement under the table. Mia's eyes went wide open. Her chair scraped back as she uttered a strained squeal. All eyes were on her. Mia's face was beet red as she glared at Dae Ho resentfully. What was that?" The table was not long, or wide, for that matter. In fact, it was just big enough for the five of them to squeeze in with a narrow gap between each chair. Therefore, Unha had seen Dae Ho's arm extended down, towards Mia, moments before her outburst. "Mia, what's wrong?" Yang-gu frowned. Sua was also staring at her, in a silent, almost non-caring sort of way. "And nothing." Mia cleared her throat. On the other hand, Dae Ho was blissfully ignoring the ongoings at the table and continued eating. Something was afoot? Unha alternated her gaze between Dae Ho and Mia. And, for some reason, she was not a fan of it. Not at all. Eventually, Yang-gu left for work. His absence eased Unha's mind. "Mom," Sua called out, donning a sleeveless, pink and white, one-piece dress. "I'm going to the library." She didn't wait for a reply. The faint click and bang of the door closing announced her departure. Not soon after, Mia, clothed in a sleeveless turtleneck and waist-high jeans, walked down. "I'm seeing my friends," she stated. And as she did so, she swept her eyes over Dae Ho, who was quietly making his way upstairs. He turned around to look back at her. There was a brief, meaningful eye contact. And then she was gone as well. Unha's gaze trailed the shadow of Dae Ho. "I wonder, is he going to masturbate?" She had done laundry earlier in the day, and, naturally, his underwear was in the heap of dirty clothes. She studied it intently, and noticed no stains in the white fabric, which meant that he must have been doing it regularly. Since he was so young and healthy, it would not be odd if he masturbated on a daily basis, multiple times too. Eunha's body moved on its own. Her long legs traipsed up the stairs, taking her to Dae Ho's room. She held a hand to her chest as she stood in front of the door. She needed an excuse of some sort, something to break the ice. Ever since their talk on that breezy night, Eunha didn't know what to think anymore. The feelings were shifting, but the wild side of her was still caged, wardened by a fading measure of control. It was the little angel on her shoulder, making sure she didn't stray off the good path of the heavenly Lord. Dae Ho was the only one that knew. He was her confidant, of sorts. A reliable shoulder she could cling to when she needed an outlet for her tears. Of course, Eunha would rather bottle everything up, but she learned that Dae Ho was sharp, and his intuition and observation would pick up on the clues. She brought a hand up and lightly knocked. "You can come in, Auntie, the door is open." So he's not masturbating, unless he is, and he's inviting me to. Eunha drew in a deep breath, cheeks rosy, and opened the door. When the room was in full view, Dae Ho's bare-chested form was immediately locked in her eyes. "He's grown," she admired, quietly, drinking in the glistering pearls of sweat falling down his chest. "He's working out, he always does." And then, a weird thought came over her head. Is that what he's been doing all this time? Working out instead of masturbating? His elbows bent, chest slanting down. Then he unbent them, bringing his body up, straight and taut. "Am I disturbing you?" Eunha asked, not moving from her spot. Dae Ho tilted his head to look at her. "You're always welcome here, and you know it." His face was radiant. Perhaps it was because of the sweat, but the little changes had not gone unnoticed. He had never been bad-looking. In fact, one could say that he was quite cute. Now, however, the childish cuteness had given way to manly lineaments. Prominent cheekbones, a slightly larger jaw, and a sharp chin. Overall, a perfectly structured, attractive face. And if he keeps working out like that, he'll have many women vying for his attention. "Why don't you sit down?" Dae Ho's question brought her back to reality. Gingerly, she accepted the offer, and in a very ladylike fashion, Eunha lowered herself down on his bed. Her back was straight, knees touching, and hands tucked on her lap. Dae Ho, upon completing his last rep, stood up and moved to his pull-up bar. "A penny for your thoughts?" "Oh." Eunha offered a flustered smile. Honestly, she didn't have much of a reason to seek him out. It was instinctive. Is it about Uncle Yonggu? He stared at her while pulling himself. Up, down, up, down. His muscles stretched and tensed. The ripples were such eye candy that, for a moment, Eunha forgot to answer. "Auntie? Up, down, up, down." "Yes." Dae Ho stopped mid-pull, arms hanging and muscles flexing. His eyes were trained on her. Eunha's cheeks were cast in a rosy hue. "Would you like to go on a walk?" It was his way of saying, "Wanna talk about it?" She easily read between the lines. "No, it's fine." She shook her head. "It's just suffocating, at times." It was not as if Yonggu was the only one to blame for the infidelity. She had blown Dae Ho just the other night. Neither of them was innocent. However, Eunha was a creature of emotion, and Yonggu's secret rendezvous with prostitutes had been, in no small part, a catalyst for what she did with Dae Ho. It was a very dysfunctional family. Perfect on the outside, rotten on the inside. "I want to be free. I want to be a little selfish, but most of all, I want to be happy." God, she hoped Mia and Sua would stay out of it. She might not have a shot at happiness anymore, but their daughters deserved the world. Dae Ho stared at her. She stared back at him, a wistful smile on her face. Then, his hands released the overhead bar. His feet touched the ground, and he quietly made his way over. "Tell me." His tone was serious, but not overbearing. His eyes told everything. There was compassion, understanding, and a fire. A desire to truly reach a hand out, grab the moon, and give it to her. "What would it take for you to be happy?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Tell me, Auntie. What can I do to make you happy?" Chapter 22. And between the thighs. Knock, aim, and shoot. Dae Ho's words were an arrow straight through her heart. "I don't know." Eunha felt the hike of an emotion she had long given up on. Her heart sang with joy, throbbing, and dancing. A surge of heat immediately came over her cheeks. "I've never thought about it." She averted her gaze. And then Dae Ho reached a hand out. His fingers strummed the sides of her cheek. "Let's think together," he said, leaning a little closer. "Whatever it is, I promise I'll help you in any way I can." His voice was a soft rush of air and vibration that tingled her ears. Eunha's eyes were a hazy swirl of emotions. "He's so close." She felt herself tense up, hands balling into fists. It was not as if they had never been this close before, but the meaning behind it, this time, made her stomach do somersaults. Is it money? She shook her head. Love? True love? He added. Something lurched in her heart. E una galp. Still, Dae Ho continued, eyes trailing every inch of her flushed face. Freedom? Both? By this point, his voice was a warm whisper. God, Unha had never been this flustered before. For some reason, Dae Ho's presence was highly captivating. And while that particular thought was sowed in her subconscious mind, her sense of morality was waging war against her heart. With each second, it was losing ground. Dae Ho. She looked at him, squeezing a reassuring smile into her face. I'm fine, don't worry about it. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing. She knew that her poor excuse of a lie didn't succeed. Are you scared? Her eyes widened. What do you mean? Are you scared of being yourself? Her lungs constricted. It's easy to let things stay like this. It feels almost normal. You feel protected in this lie you're living, because the truth is hard to bear, hard to accept. It's a foreign concept. You never had to deal with it after you got married. You're chained into someone else's world. You're scared to break free, like a bird that has been living its whole life in a cage. It doesn't know what's outside, so it's content to stay there, in its own, little, ca. Dae Ho, stop. Unha plunged her head forward, burying her face into his bare chest, hands clawing desperately at his arms. She panted, her breathing a painful weight in her chest. Dae Ho's arms slowly wrestled out of her grasp and wrapped around her head. I'm sorry. He nuzzled his chin into the crown of her head, nose sinking into her hair and breathing in the faint tang of her shampoo. Unha's breathing calmed down as she inhaled his own scent, savoring and memorizing it. It was so comfortable to be in his arms. So safe. Can I really be myself? Why was it so damn good when his arms tightened around her? When was the last time she was held like that? Unha tentatively looked up, chin resting against his velvety, warm skin. Sensing her gaze, he looked down, meeting her wet, orchid-tinted eyes. I didn't mean to make you cry. Dae Ho whispered guiltily. She smiled. Just a little. I'm not crying. And then he started swaying her, like a slow dance, or a baby being lulled to sleep. A soft coo left his lips. Hush little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird don't sing, Papa's gonna buy a diamond ring. Dae Ho. Her smile widened, eyes crinkling in mirth. I'm not a baby either. Perhaps. His fingers combed lazily through her hair. She sighed pleasantly. But there's no shame in behaving like one from time to time. So, if you ever feel like you need someone to just hold you, to coddle you, to protect and love you, I'll always be there for you, Auntie. Thank you. A shiver kissed her spine. From top to bottom. Goosebumps reared up all over her skin. Dae Ho. Unha pushed herself further into him, her generous bosom squishing against the lower side of his stomach. He stiffened a little, but she ignored it, until a hard, growing bump started poking her from below, demanding her attention. She blinked, eyes trailing down. A massive tent stretched the fabric of his pants. And it was pointed at her. Naturally, Dae Ho was also aware of the not-so-little problem down there. Sorry. He immediately tried to pull back, but Unha's held on to him, her breasts pressing further into the rigid appendage. Auntie, her breathing was so hot that it was as if bursts of steam were coming out of her mouth. Dae Ho. Unha gulped, one hand descending down his chest, ever so southward. Her fingers clamped around the waistband of his pants. You must not have been taking care of yourself properly, right? His expression denoted that what she just said didn't make sense, but in her emotional haze, she translated everything as the complete opposite. I'll take care of it for you. Just like last time. And the time before that. A healthy young man like him has to do it every day, or. Unha started to tug his pants down, but a hand grabbed her wrist. She looked up, flustered. Dae Ho. It wouldn't be fair to do such a thing when you're like that. He guided her hand away. But. He cupped her chin, tilting it up. His eyes bore into hers. I don't want to take advantage of you, Auntie. Unha bit her bottom lip, shaking her head. You're not. Some of her brown curls fell off their crown and wound over her eyes. This is just me helping you out, as any other proper mother should. But if you don't want, then. Star operator. Silly. This woman was so complicated that it'd take half of my lifespan to unravel her emotions. She didn't take her eyes off of me, and something in my heart twisted and tightened. I've never been an idiot for anyone before. But how could someone look so innocently sexy? That polarity alone could truly shake a man's heart, move, tease, and manipulate it with a bat of those doe eyes. For God's sake, she was not even doing it on purpose. Dae Ho. She called me out. And when I resurfaced back to reality, I realized my right hand was still gently wrapped around her chin, my thumb sweeping left and right, just an inch below those kissable lips of hers. "Do you really mean it, Auntie?" I asked, giving her a chance to realize that things were snowballing down a war zone of debauchery. I wanted her to do the right and call it quits, before our relationship was embroidered by a messy tapestry of feelings that had to be kept away, for the sake of this family's well-being. Unha hesitated a little. I was a bit relieved to see that she had the common sense to think it over, at least. I was already playing a dangerous game with Mia. If Unha joined in as well, I didn't know what kind of chain reaction would ensue. I had to tread carefully. If she says no, I'm not going to force it. Ido. But she didn't. Unha extended her hand again. Wait. I grabbed it again. She blinked, a sad gleam flashing past her eyes. Dae Ho, you. Let me apologize for earlier. Her face scrunched up in confusion. I'd never turned down a blowjob, not from you anyway. I sat down next to her, my hand releasing hers and slanting down on her thigh. It rested there, content to feel the soft, pliable flesh underneath her flowery dress. Be a bit more selfish, alright? Today you won't give. You will receive. Unha's eyes went comically wide as she gasped. No. Dae Ho. Seriously. I couldn't resist. With my other hand, I cradled her cheek. Dae Ho, wait. My lips lunged for that creamy, white neck. My tongue snaked out, slithering across the clammy, soft flesh, tasting the salt of her sweat. She cried out, the sudden pleasure striking her like a bolt from the blue. Her instinctive reaction, despite her half-hearted mumblings of refusal, was to wrap her arms around my neck. She trembled as I caught her skin between my teeth, tweaking, sucking, and biting it, testing how far I could go before she felt pain. Dae Ho. Unha breathed out, fingers burrowing into the back of my head. Ong. I eased her down on my bed, my tongue sweeping across her carotid artery before it dipped into the hollow of her throat. After I gave her neck enough affection, I pulled away, looming over Unha. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes wet with tears. She breathed in and out, in small but greedy bursts. Hey, Auntie. Unha stared at me, dazed. When was the last time someone tasted you? Chapter 23, Unha's inebriated face immediately sobered up. Wait, Dae Ho. Her hands held my shoulders, but I didn't budge. Why would I? Why you can't? She pleaded, weakly, averting her gaze in her typical flustered fashion. A last, half-hearted attempt to retain some sort of normalcy between us. Quite late, at this point. Is this what you really want, or is it your fear speaking for you? I asked, looking at her dead in the eye. You came here, already expecting something like this to happen. If you wish to back out, I won't stop you. But please, Auntie, bear in mind that running away from your fears is not a step in the right direction. Neither for you, nor for me. Dae Ho. Unha swallowed the dry lump of nervousness in her throat. The conflict on her face slowly faded. She released her hold on me, splaying her arms at the sides of her head instead. I'm not in the best of my years. Is that what she was worried about? I wondered when was the last time Yonggu complimented her. This woman had more insecurities than I thought. And one of them was such an unnecessary one. What are you saying, Auntie? I breathed out in her neck, inhaling her scent. If perfection had a face, it'd be yours. Unha squirmed, eyes half-lidded as she wrapped her arms around me. The haze of her lust was overtaking her mind again, and it would inevitably overtake mine as well. And as her fingers dug burrows in my hair, I made my descent down her body. We should get rid of this, shouldn't we? A surge of embarrassment came over her face, and she did her best not to look at me. I moved my fingers, and the straps on her shoulders were loosened, allowing me to expose her creamy hills. Oh, she's not wearing a bra. I cupped a sphere, marveling at how big and soft it was. Una squirmed. She's really sensitive too. My thumb and index clamped the pink knob on her breast. Dae Ho. She called me out in that whiny, irresistible voice of hers. Touching was not enough. I unfurled my tongue and spiraled it around her nipple. HNNNN. I dived my other hand down the gulf between her thighs. Unha cried out, her tongue peeking out of her mouth. Is she really that sensitive? Because, while I was confident in my bed wrestling, there was no way she would make such exaggerated sounds with just a little foreplay. As a matter of fact, it was not only Unha. Mia also seemed extremely receptive and vocal of my affection. I pulled away, a bridge of drool connecting my tongue and Unha's cherry. My right hand, in the meanwhile, was skating up and down the silky length of her thigh. From her knee up to her inner depths, right next to her panties. I slathered every inch of her skin in goosebumps. Dae Ho. Unha, when exposed to so much pleasure, seemed to forget every other word but my name. I shuffled back a little, parted her legs, and tucked my head between her thighs. Honestly, I should have let her get me off first. My cock was aching from how turned on I was. It was boiling hot and throbbing. Still, I meant what I said earlier. At least for today, I'll make sure she was properly taken care of. Dae Ho bite. Unha propped her upper body up, her hand snapping down to cover her panty-clad slit. She gulped nervously, and had a bit of trouble doing so due to how rough her breathing was. I didn't say anything. Silence could be as much of an answer as 100 words glued together was. It all depended on her interpretation of it. Unha fluttered her eyelashes in a coy manner. Do you really want to see it? Did she place more importance on the visual aesthetics of it? Because I had already touched it before. On the very same night she confessed her complaints about her failed marriage. I thought we were way past the point of being awkward about our bodies. Of course I do, I said, eyes softening. Unha chewed her bottom lip. The hesitation slowly flowed off her face. She lay back down, arms over her head and eyes staring at me in a lazy, lustful way. Now that her hands were out of the way, I reached mine out and, grabbing the sides of her panties, I slipped it out. She helped me by elevating her legs a little. My eyes immediately fell on her womanhood, glistening with arousal. It was clean-shaven. All natural, like Mia. A perfect pedestal for my tongue to show off its contorting skills. Why did you want to hide this from me, Auntie? I asked, breathing out right into her. She shivered. A flower doesn't hide its petals. Dae Ho. Her embarrassed smile gained a little more honestly at my words. A little bit of fondness, exasperation. And a little bit of genuine happiness. Really. She was such a cutie. I inched a finger forward, tracing a light path around her core. The intoxicating, musky scent of a woman came in waves at me, fanning the fire in my loins. Unha curled the sheets in fistfuls. My tongue extended, and the moment it made contact with her nether lips, she yelped, eyes widening, and back arching. HNNNNN. Her legs, which were sprawled loosely at my sides, clamped around my neck. I had barely touched her, yet she had already turned into putty, moaning and chanting my name as if I was some religious deity. I paced myself, sweeping my tongue around the outer folds. The sensation was less concentrated and electrifying than before, and she felt it. The aching need to be licked and eaten out there. But my teasing game was strong, and I wanted her to beg for it. Dae Ho. Unha was bleary-eyed as she craned her neck to get a good eyeful of me. On. Dide, Ashinen. Her toes curled, thighs flexing and tightening around me. Please. Please what? I feigned ignorance, my tongue straying even further from its objective. And the farther it went, the less the pleasure. Except that she had already experienced what I could do. It couldn't be forgotten. It wasn't enough. Dae Ho. Her hands held the sides of my head, her nails scraping my skin as they struggled to find a good handhold. HNNN. Please. Please what, Auntie? I grinned. I don't understand. Eat my, on. Unha's tongue licked the air. Pussy. I did as the queen commanded, and ventured my tongue inside her wonderland. Fire. The rippling heat coursed through her blood, stealing her breath and suffocating her in the intense pleasure of that tongue. She didn't understand. She couldn't understand how or why it felt so unimaginably good. He shouldn't be this good. Unha arched her back so much that her spine was hurting from all the twisting and squirming. Is it instinctive? Dae Ho's ministrations were spreading waves of ecstasy all over her body. She was lightheaded, her muscles coiling in tension. Her mind floated, thinking about nothing but Dae Ho's tongue. Slippery, warm, firm. It hit all the right spots, and it was a roller coaster of pure bliss. The heat quickly built up in her belly. And then he plowed a finger inside as well. The tension in her stomach reached a breaking point. Unha's mind was eclipsed with pleasure. From the tip of her toes up to her head. Aning. She cried out, releasing everything. Lights flashed in her head. Her eyes couldn't keep track of anything. She was lost. Lost in the best orgasm she ever had to date. Dae Ho didn't pull away. He lay there, between her thighs, lapping away at the spurting juices and placing a chain of soft kisses around her soaked pussy. He worshipped every inch of her with his lips. Are you feeling better, Auntie? Unha's mind spun a bit as she stared at the ceiling, her chest heaving up and down. Her heart pounded in her ears, echoing off like a continuous drum of war. Except that there had been no war but the one she waged internally, earlier, when she stupidly thought it was a good idea to turn down that godly tongue. Her body tingled with the remnants of her climax. And even then, Dae Ho amplified everything by brushing his lips across her thighs. He began from her core, and proceeded to go all the way down her legs, in a linear path, leaving a little of love with each kiss. Auntie. She somehow found enough strength to look at him. The moment he got to her foot, cradling it with one hand, he met her eyes, and kissed her instep. Do you understand, now? Your beauty has never withered. It was simply overshadowed by the weed latched onto you. And you know who I'm talking about, don't you? He placed another kiss on her foot. A slow brush of his lips. E una galta. Dae Ho, you can't bloom if you're not showered with genuine love, with genuine care. Chapter 24, you go down just like Holy Mary. E nas beobebasha. Eunha was entranced as she watched Dae Ho devote his lips to every inch of her skin. He was an artist, and her body was a canvas. He painted her in his love, writing his name with his tongue. Oh, and what a tongue it was! He marked her. Each little brush was done with the utmost tenderness. He was Leonardo da Vinci, and she was his Mona Lisa. A breath was released, its warm rush coaxing her hair to stand on its end. Dae Ho brushed his lips ever so slightly against her skin, treating it like the finest porcelain. His strokes were feathery light. The contact barely lasted a second. And when she peered at him from above her raised chin, he was already mapping out her belly. Her stomach muscles contracted, arching inward. Dae Ho smirked as he dragged his lips northward, inhaling her scent and exhaling it back out at her. She shivered, and he enjoyed the sensual torture he was putting her through. Eunha writhed, steam billowing out of her mouth. The pounding of her heart reverberated in her head. Thump, thump, thump. This was unlike the orgasm she had earlier. This was love? Every kiss was like an acknowledgement, a praise, of her perfection. Even the parts she thought were flawed, he loved them all nonetheless. Something stirred in her chest. A creature clawed at the bars of its cage. And when Dae Ho was face to face with her, that creature tore apart the cage and pummeled her heart. What is this? Her pulse had skyrocketed. Her cheeks were on fire. And an earnest sparkle shone in her lust-clouded eyes. Auntie. Dae Ho whispered. Being called out in such a low, deep tone made her stomach twist. He had kissed her everywhere but her lips. Now he loomed over her, hands at the sides of her head, and from that position, she had a perfect view of his toned body. Is he going to kiss me? The bunny in her chest wouldn't stop hopping. Thump, thump, thump. A voice in her head told her that kissing him was not exactly a good idea. It would be like sealing some sort of pact, like putting a name to this twisted relationship they had. They had come so far that a kiss, of all things, shouldn't have meant anything, but the closer he got, the drier her mouth became. She could smell herself on his breath. Dae Ho stopped an inch or so from her. Except that he didn't close the gap between them. Instead, he swept his thumb across her lower lip. Eunha stared at him, and slowly, almost instinctively, opened her mouth. He agreed to the unspoken invitation, and slid his thumb inside, over her playful tongue, who coiled around the intruder like a snake. She tucked his thumb between her teeth, biting slightly. Dae Ho gulped. I know I said you'd be receiving today, but God, you're making this really hard for me. I seriously don't understand why Uncle Yongu would cheat on someone like you. Eunha's eyes made a beeline for his crotch. Considering how strained the fabric was, he was probably teetering on the edge of patience. Does it hurt, Dae Ho? She traced his jawline with her finger. It must be really uncomfortable. He nodded, pulling his thumb out. A bit? She bit her bottom lip. Perhaps we can fix that? She nudged him a little, prompting him to slide off of her and switch positions. He happily obliged. A trill of exhilaration ran through Eunha when she found herself in a commanding stance, straddling him. There was a tinge of embarrassment as well. Of course, his earlier actions, and the way he poured affection all over her, made her feel more confident. His silence eased her mind, though the way his eyes ravaged her bare body made her heart throb. He could make her feel like a puddle of goo without speaking a word. Eunha didn't indulge in teasing his lust. He was already hard. For her. She gripped the rim of his waistband, and brought everything down. The shadow of his huge cock cast a shadow over her face, like a pillar of pure, pleasurable destruction. A focused point of heat immediately overtook her stomach. It has been a while since I did that. And then her eyes found his. She licked her lips, her heart singing a symphony of love and lust. The fevered desire to return the pleasure to this young stud that was her adopted son crumbled the last bastion of defense in her mind. Dae Ho. Eunha mouthed out, bathing his shaft in a rush of warmth. His eyes were fully locked on her face. On her lips. Eunha wrapped a dainty hand around his hilt. The way he hissed, as if her touch scorched him, made her spine tingle. She ran her hand up and down, in a deliberate slow motion. The veins on his cock throbbed pleasantly against her palm. Despite her best efforts to mentally deny it, Eunha loved holding Dae Ho's cock. It was such a huge slab of man-meat. Thick and powerful. A heaven-sent tool to conquer women. However, it was also his most sensitive part. His weakness. With just a flick of her wrist, pleasure contorted his body. With another well-timed twist of her hand, a gasp clawed through his throat. His breathing was like puffs of vapor. Eun-ha watched as his foreskin rolled all the way down, exposing the exquisite red crown. A pearl of precum had seeped out, slicking her fingers in their upward pump. It looked so good. She crawled deeper between his open legs, and leaned down. Dae Ho. Her face, her lush, plump lips, was so close to his dick that she could see the blazing lust in his eyes, barely held together by a cord of sanity. "Auntie, are you teasing me?" Dae Ho growled, his smile spread uncomfortably across his face. Oops. It was not her intention. Eun-ha had just let herself go, a little. She brought his throbbing pole closer to her, and tapped her face lightly with it. Her skin relished in the contact. It was warm, no, it was scalding hot. Eun-ha dragged her lips across his pulsing rod, until they rode all the way up to his flared gland. She didn't guzzle it in right away. Instead, she proceeded to jack off the bulbous tip with her lips, stroking it from left to right. Her tongue flicked in and out intermittently to add to his pleasure. Dae Ho hauled a deep breath in. His hands shot to her head, grabbing it from both sides and nudging it forward. The invitation was urgent, and Eun-ha had enough fun already. So she parted her lips, unfurled her tongue, and lowered her head down, until a noticeable bulge appeared on her neck. Her gag reflex kicked in, but Eun-ha reined it in before it could turn into a fit of coughs. Oh! Hearing his shuddering moan was all the motivation she needed to go wild. His grip on her head relented, but still held firm, as if she was about to stop sucking this delicious cock anytime soon. "Why, does this make me feel so damn good?" She applied a gentle sucking motion, and her cheeks hollowed as a result. A slurping, slimy sound rang out. Her tongue swept all over the throbbing majesty rammed deep in her gullet. Eun-ha pulled away slightly, a cough slipping out as she did so. An outpour of drool connected her face and the hilt of his cock in a messy, glimmering web. She didn't have time to catch her breath when his hands hastily pushed her back down, prompting his slicked member to skinny dip back inside her throat. Her eyes widened, but she immediately adapted and continued blowing him, her head bobbing up and down. "Auntie." Dae Ho's fingers sunk into her hair. His call was urgent, not that she needed that to know that his beautiful meat was about to splurge its cream down her esophagus. As such, Eun-ha's bobbing accelerated, her drool clicking as Dae Ho's cockhead barged past her uvula at a pace that would have left most women a coughing mess on the floor. The grip on her head tightened, and Eun-ha barely had a second to breathe before a rush of cum blasted its way down her throat in a steady, sticky torrent. His cock bulged, denoting that the second round was about to flood her stomach. She did her best to swallow and contain the explosion within the confines of her oral cavity, but Dae Ho's treat was more eruptive than she initially thought. What she didn't manage to gulp down, spilled out of the corners of her lips in thick streamlets, flowing down her chin before conjoining halfway through her neckline and inevitably finishing their course between her breasts. Eun-ha's head was bereft of activity, as if, for that brief moment, her mind had transcended beyond mundane, unnecessary thoughts. All thoughts but one. Dae Ho's divine cook. The warm semen pooled up in her stomach, compressing into a ball of pleasurable heat that radiated throughout her body. "This is amazing." She brought a thumb up to wipe off the white substance on her lips, scooping the leftover, trickling seed into a spoonful and jamming it all into her mouth. He had drunk everything she offered him earlier. It was only natural she did the same. Chapter 25, Bruises and Bite Marks. The spike of ecstasy left me momentarily breathless. Its jolts of pleasure continued their path through my nerves, before slowly fading out. Clarity returned. Enough for me to get my thoughts in order. As usual, a simple, or what should have been one, conversation between us ended up snowballing into a sweaty, tangled mess of limbs and fluids. It was not the first time. And if Eun-ha was anything like Mia, it wouldn't have been the last either. Yong-gu was cucking himself by neglecting this woman. Better for me. He didn't deserve her. Dae Ho. Eun-ha's damp, tousled hair, heavy-lidded eyes, and flushed skin gave her this otherworldly, post-sex, erotic glow. A twitch in my lower area warned me that the cool-down was finished, but I swiftly stifled the urge. "Auntie." I stared at the streams of jizz between her perky breasts. "Let me get a few tiss." "No." She shook her head, trembling a bit, eyes unfocused. "It's fine." The way she said it alluded to the contrary. And the smile that suddenly came up on her face, slicked with man cream and drool, was quite off-putting. Probably because she looked so zoned out that it freaked me a little. If she was still on cloud 9, it was about time she returned back to the ground. I paddled over to her. "You can't go around like this," I said, watching the messy strands of hair sticking out all over her face. I reached a hand out, nuzzling her chin. I tilted her head left and right. "We just need to clean up your face a bit." Eun-ha was a little flustered as I fussed over her appearance. Dae Ho. However, the meek smile adorning her face slowly thinned into a line. "Dae Ho." The sudden change in her tone caught me off guard. I blinked. Yes, Auntie? She placed her hand on my chest, fingers trailing up, until they skimmed across a fading bruise. A gift from Mia. Oh, I forgot about that. Is that? I couldn't pass it off as a simple bruise. The teeth marks, while faint, were evident. Yes, I admitted, placing my own hand over hers. It's a hickey. Oh, the response was quite muted. Her eyes swirled with a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of curiosity. I brought my thumb back to her chin and tilted it up. Her eyes locked onto mine, even though she desperately wanted to avert them, knowing how vulnerable and see-through they were. Would you like to try? Surprise flickered on her face. You want me to bite you? It's not a bite. I shook my finger at her. She tilted her head in a very cutesy fashion. It's not? It's a love bite, Auntie. I explained scholarly, smiling at the way a rosy color flashed across her cheeks. And they're easily distinguishable. She nodded, hanging on every word that came out of my lips. At her silence, I continued. A bite is an action meant to willingly hurt someone. I nudged her chin forward, prompting her lips to get dangerously close to mine. A love bite is an expression of passion. A token of love, or, in some cases, possession. Now, which type of mark do you want to leave on me, Auntie? I cocked my head to the side, exposing my neck. Dae Ho, is it really fine? Unha bit her bottom lip. I don't want to hurt you. The pain is temporary. The memory is forever. I urged her in a soft voice. Come on now. I would eagerly leave one on you, but it would be quite suspicious. Not so much for me considering that I'm not married. She gulped, mentally preparing herself before she straightened her back and placed her hands on my shoulders. I held the back of her head as a sign of invitation and guided her down. Soft lips touched the skin of my neck, right on the opposite side of Mia's signature. It was a little above my collarbone. Any higher than that, and I'd be hard-pressed to hide it. Now you bite and suck. I advised her. Not too hard. You don't want to rip a chunk of flesh off. Unha slowly spread her lips apart, brushing her teeth against my skin. Her tongue instinctively rolled out, circling it around my neck in some sort of preparatory ritual. Then, she applied a little pressure to her jaw, and her teeth seized a nub of flesh. She bit into it, sucking and licking, just as I had instructed her to do. Harder, Auntie. Don't be afraid. After enough encouragement, Unha sank her teeth into my neck properly, like a very clumsy vampire. My little vampire. I couldn't help but call out, chuckling a bit when she pulled away, an uncharacteristic pout on her lips. First a baby, now a vampire. She smiled, shaking her head in exasperation. A baby vampire. You need constant attention, lullabies, and virgin blood. She burst into a peal of laughter. Oh, Dae Ho. So, how is it? I asked, leaning back a little and touching the wet, twinging bruise on my neck. I couldn't see it, but if her proud look was anything to go by, then it must have been a success. Not bad for your first time? Unha's smile was a little shy as she tapped a finger against her lips. An earnest light flashed past her eyes. Can I? I immediately interrupted her. No. You can't cover me in bites, Auntie. POV. The room was darker than usual, as if closed off from space and time. It was a whole different world, or, according to the owner, a sanctuary. The air was stale, a consequence of the completely barricaded windows. It was out of choice, not of circumstance. Hello everyone. This is my first video, and I'm Dae Ho, an aspiring football player, and today... A pause, in which only the slight humming of the computer's overworking fan sounded out. I'll be attempting to break the world record for crossbar volleys done in 1 minute. The rush of a sigh echoed off. Sprawled on a chair was the sole occupant of the room. A girl, who looked younger than she was laser-focused on the video taking over the full screen of her monitor. A pitch. A young man. And a ball. The camera was a bit shaky, but the filming encapsulated all the important details. The highest count recorded so far is 7. She let his words seep out of the speakers and trickle into her ears, like drops of honey. Dae Ho. She said his name, rolling it around her tongue, tasting its essence. She raised her knees up and wrapped her arms around them. It was not her first time watching the video. Nor the second, or the third, or the 100th. The first time it came out, she had gone a whole day watching it, analyzing it, memorizing every line, and falling in love with each curve of his smile. At some point, the video ended. Huh? A stab of panic twisted her face. She tucked a thumb into her mouth, between her teeth, and started chewing it. Her other hand, in the meanwhile, clumsily grabbed the mouse, and the cursor hastily moved the red line back to the start. She slammed the spacebar. Hello everyone. This is my first video, and I'm Dae Ho, an aspiring football player, and today. The impatient frown melted off, exposing a beautiful, relieved smile. Just hearing the low, confident baritone of his voice eased her mind. The chewing tapered off, and after heaving a deep breath, she pulled her thumb out. The hours passed, with Dae Ho's video constantly in loop. Eventually, a weak knocking disturbed the dark peace of her room. "Dee dear, lunch is ready," a voice, quite timidly, announced from beyond the door. A surge of sizzling heat bubbled in her chest, and spilled out of her mouth in the form of a growl. "Shut the fuck up." She reached a hand out, grabbed an empty glass nearby, and hurled it at the door. The impact shattered it, sending a volley of shards barreling to the floor. And then she heard it. The hurried pitter-patter of footsteps scurrying away. The sound brought her immense satisfaction. "And don't you dare call me dear, you bitch," she added as an afterthought. "The highest count recorded so far is 7. Dae Ho's voice snapped her eyes back to the monitor, where he proceeded to show off his magic in a way that left her starry-eyed. The tension in her muscles slowly came undone, and she sunk further into her gaming chair, legs raised and chin resting on her knees. The editing sure leaves to be desired though. She mumbled, eyes narrowing as the cursor moved around, clicking "Show More" on the description of the video. And after a quick scan, she found a way to contact him. Yes. 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 She laughed, rocking her body in a giddy little dance that made the wheels of her chair spin. She spread her legs out and hopped off. Her phone was charging on the bedside table. She lunged for it, unplugging the wire, and flopped on her bed with a happy bounce. With a swift movement of her finger, she unlocked the screen, revealing an image of Dae Ho as her home screen picture. It was a screenshot from the video, and cropped to increase the size of his face, in a way that occupied the entirety of her screen. She hugged her phone with a muffled squeal of joy, her feet kicking the air in her exuberant display of affection. She opened up her Kakao story, found his profile, and immediately began typing a message. Chapter 26, in regards to the latest chapter of SC. First of all, sorry. I'm actually going to post the next chapter within the next 10 to 20 minutes. If you're from the future, then I'm not apologizing to you since you didn't have to wait. HMPF. Beware, spoilers lay ahead. Alright, let's be serious. I want to take the opportunity to address this issue and clarify a couple of things. Yes, the last chapter of Secret Class. Dae Ho wants to take revenge. Scary. I'm sorry, but I feel like it was kinda out of nowhere. And absolutely meaningless as well. It's a pornoi. You don't need to justify your main character's rapist action as some sort of non-foreshadowed plot twist. So, you're telling me that Dae Ho is not actually a retard but a cunning, smart, revenge-driven guy who's been pretending to be clueless and stupid the whole time? I would have accepted it if the author dropped hints here and there, but right from the start, Dae Ho has behaved like a retard. Even when he was alone. Whenever the chapter was from his point of view, we had access to his thoughts and monologues. Remember when he sniffed Yuhi's panties? There was no need for him to do that if he wasn't a retard. Many of the things he did in the manhwa, in fact, were unnecessary if, and let me emphasize that, if, he wasn't an idiot. Besides, it was Eunha who actually approached him first, wasn't she? So yeah, in this story, Dae Ho was actually true to his initial design, and was a mentally challenged kid before Jair took over. Sorry, but that won't change. Moving on. The death of Dae Ho's parents. Yes, that is kinda fishy. And Yonggu is definitely behind it. Well, regardless of what happens in the pornoi, it shouldn't matter to us. Why? Because I've already thought out the ending, the reason behind his parents' death, and Yonggu's involvement in all of this. Chapter 27. Hello, I'm Tifa. I stared at myself in the bedroom mirror, not to preen my handsome appearance, but to analyze the extent of Eunha's hickey. On one side I had Mia's signature in a faint, fading purple ink, while on the other, Eunha's reddening stamp was still quite vivid. As long as I was careful, no one would notice. Well, that required me not to get naked with Mia before the bruises faded completely. Which, frankly, should not take more than a couple of days. My healing factor was also bordering on being supernatural. If one day, a long-lost, smoking hot, cousin were to barge into my life, claiming to be some superpowered alien from a distant cluster of galaxies, I'd totally believe them. Yes, perhaps it was an embellished view of my situation, but this body couldn't be regarded with normal standards. At this point, I was willing to believe anything. I wondered if my parents had a similar constitution, or if I was the only anomaly in this world. Thinking about them left a bitter taste in my mouth. The memories were diluted. I vaguely remembered my father's face, or my mother's. Everything was hidden behind a flash of light or a blurry filter. Father was an academic, a man who sought opportunities. He was deeply entangled with Yanggu. They had known each other for a long time. Yet, something was very wrong. A lance of pain stabbed my head. I staggered back, until my legs hit the bed and I fell down on it. The soft cushion helped me relax a little, and gradually, the sudden headache tapered off. I breathed in and out, uncoiling the tension from my muscles. What just happened? I stared at my hands. They were trembling. My heartbeat had skyrocketed too, pulsing with such ominous power that, for a brief moment, I thought I was about to die, again. Thankfully, the trembling came to a stop, and my body was back to its optimal condition. That's very concerning. A chirping melody lit up the screen of my smartphone. I ran a hand over my face, organizing my thoughts. Memories of the World Cup flashed through my mind, but I promptly waved them off. I rolled around, stretched a hand to grab the phone, and rolled back around. It was a notification from my Kakao story. It was the mainstream social media platform Koreans used. I rarely logged in, to be honest. And the only reason I made an account there was because I wanted to link it to my YouTube channel. I opened up the notification, noticing a somewhat familiar name. Lil Tifa. There was no profile picture, but the string of text that appeared as soon as the chat overtook my screen was quite eye-catching. Lil Tifa. Hi, I'm Tifa. I'm sorry if this is random, but I saw your video on YouTube. OMG, it was so good. I loved it. You probably don't know me, but I'm the one who posted that video about you. I'm sorry if I did it without your consent. I didn't make any money off of it. If you want, I can take it down, equals *** smiley face. Oh, so she was Tifa Football UWU. She was partly the reason why I started this YouTube channel. I was quite surprised she didn't monetize it. Back when I played professionally, there were many channels that monetized clips and highlights of me. I clicked on the text bar, and the digital keyboard immediately showed up. I started typing. Dae Ho, hello. Thank you for reaching out, and thank you for your kind words. I appreciate your honesty, but there's no need to take it down. That video you posted was the sole reason my channel got so many subscribers in the first place. She had, after all, updated the description of that video with the link to my channel. I benefited a lot from it. In fact, my channel had already broken through 10,000 subscribers, which reminded me that I had to upload new content soon. This girl was surprisingly kind. Not everyone would have contacted me to simply apologize. And was she even a girl to begin with? I was aware that the internet could be a cesspit of shady people, and among them, guys who disguised themselves as girls. Tifa, who was online, immediately began to type. Lil Tifa, you. I thought you'd be angry, but really, you're so good, and so nice too. Lil Tifa, Lil Tifa, can I ask you something? Dae Ho, sure. Lil Tifa, are you by any chance looking for an editor? I saw your video, and it's well done, but the editing is amateurish. If you want to make it big on YouTube, you need a good editor. And I'm really good, haha, I promise. I was a bit taken aback, but there was truth in her words. I knew how to do basic things with a computer, but editing wasn't something I ever saw the need to learn. Except that I wanted to either ask Go Bong, or perhaps even Suah. The other issue was that I didn't have enough money to hire an editor, let alone a self-proclaimed good one. Dae Ho, I'm flattered, but I have to refuse. Lil Tifa, huh? Why? Lil Tifa, wait, you don't believe me, do you? Let me send you a few clips I've edited. I was about to type back a response when a bunch of videos popped up in the chat, barely taking a few seconds to load before they were ready to be played. Well, watching them wouldn't hurt. Out of curiosity, I tapped on the first video. It was a well-put-together compilation of clips from famous football players. It had a catchy background melody, and it wasn't particularly loud either. It was just enough to make it immersive without being annoying. The second video was a very pleasing to watch, albeit short, clip of anime characters. The editing was very smooth, with incredible transitions, bursts of light, and bouncy effects. The third and last video was probably the most striking I had seen so far. It was a kinetic typography lyrics video of a K-pop song. I didn't know what was the benchmark that distinguished a good editor from a bad one. The videos edited by Tifa were really great, but perhaps it was not that good in the eyes of a professional editor? Regardless, there was no way I could pool up enough money to pay her, even if I asked Mia, which I had no intention of doing. I decided to be honest. Dae Ho, you're really talented, Tifa. The edits are wonderful. The problem is that, at the moment, I don't have enough money to pay for your work. Perhaps we can collaborate in the future? I'm definitely interested in hiring your talent. Lil Tifa, thank you. Aksanshiru konflex. Lil Tifa, and I'm willing to do it for free. Free of charge. I stared at the chat, speechless. There was no way someone would be willing to work for free, especially when said someone was a random stranger. It made me wary that she, or, potentially, he, had bad intentions. Dae Ho, I would feel really bad if I didn't pay you. Lil Tifa, please. Give me a chance. Please EE. And if you want you can pay me when your channel generates enough revenue. Probably sensing my discomfort, she immediately continued. Lil Tifa, I saw you play the other day. It was only for a short while, but it's undeniable that you're talented. I have this gut feeling that one day you'll play for the big teams, and it might be a little selfish of me, but I'd really like to know you, help you, and share some of your glory. With your skills and my edits, the whole country will bow down to your talent. Lil Tifa, please, don't deny me this opportunity. I heaved a deep sigh. It was not as if I needed her to be scouted by good teams, but it was also true that with her help, the channel would have smooth sailing. More views, more revenue, more attention, and, inevitably, more opportunities. After a whole minute of indecision, in which Tifa started typing and deleting constantly, I finally replied. Dae Ho, alright, since you're so eager, I guess there's no harm in cooperating. I feel a bit guilty for not paying you, but I'm confident that the channel has a good future ahead. And with your help, we'll get there soon. Lil Tifa, yes. I won't disappoint you. Asterisk. Tifa's POV. A cheer of unbridled joy burst out of Tifa's lips. She rolled around her bed, left to right to left, squealing and giggling. She held her phone tightly against her chest, as if it were her most precious treasure. He said yes. In her mind, Tifa had already drawn their entire future together. It'd start with their first meeting, where it'd be love at first sight. They'd get googly-eyed, blush, and be really awkward. But it was fine. Because they'd get past that stage and become intimate. They'd hold hands, hug, and share a kiss on a moonlit balcony. He'd tell her she was the most important person in his life, and she'd cry, because no one had ever told her such a beautiful thing. He'd invite her to a fancy restaurant. He'd go on his knees, and with the most awkward speech ever, he'd propose to her, and she'd say yes. And then they'd get married. They'd have a beautiful kid. No, 2 kids. No, they'd have at least 10 children. Never mind. Make it 11. A whole football team for their daddy Dae Ho to coach. Dae Ho. It sounded so good. Haha. Tifa blushed madly, eyes glowing with pink hearts. Ha 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 ha. She stared at the chat, heaving a dreamy sigh as she did so. Lil Tifa, we'll see each other soon, yes? She tucked her thumb between her teeth and started nibbling it anxiously. Dae Ho, yes, I have a few ideas that might work out, but I'd like to get your opinion on them first. I'm not particularly acquainted with YouTube and what's currently popular. Having your input would definitely be of help. Lil Tifa, don't worry, I'll teach you everything you need to know. Dae Ho, thank you. I appreciate it, really. Lil Tifa, hee, no problem. Tifa released her thumb and stared at the ceiling, an eager smile adorning her face. It was so eager, in fact, that it stretched from ear to ear. She brought her phone up to her face, zoomed in on Dae Ho's profile picture, and with her other hand, she slithered it down, between her writhing thighs. Good things are worth waiting for, but for you, I'll make an exception. I'll go and get you myself. Chapter 28, Come here, Piggy. Tifa's POV. Tifa shuffled her bare legs off the edge of her bed. Her panties were wet and uncomfortable. She slowly pushed herself up and, with an awkward gait, headed to the switch next to the door. With a flick, the lights turned on. She immediately recoiled, eyes squeezing shut. She rubbed them, giving them enough time to adjust to the brightness of the room. That bitch is not wrong. I should start going out more. Tifa huffed an irritable sigh, though as she recalled her chat with Dae Ho, a silly grin spread across her face. He sounds like a good guy. Of course, a 10-minute chat with someone she didn't know was not a reliable source to draw up a personality test from. But Tifa had a very big heart, and she was willing to trust her gut feeling that Dae Ho was the one. Thinking about him, a stab of panic distorted her face. She hurried over to the body-sized mirror hanging on the wall and inspected herself under the flickering light. Dark eyes stared back at her through the reflection. They were crowned by sweepy, velvety eyelashes. She was short, barely an inch past 5 feet. Guys like short girls, right? Her skin was pale, almost ghostly so, and the color would have been off-putting if not for its unblemished, delicate beauty. If ghosts held beauty pageants, she'd definitely claim the first place. Tifa ran her fingers along the rounded, slim contour of her face. They skimmed across the mole right underneath her left eye, moving up, until they curled around a lock of hair. A rich brown color, like mahogany. It fell down her shoulders in silky threads, each strand an earthly shade blessed by nature. Her nose was small, with a slightly upturned tip. Her lips? Slim, rosy, and delicate, like rose petals. More than a ghost, perhaps, she looked like the spirit of a sakura tree. The clothes she was wearing were baggy and very unflattering. She always chose comfort over style. Who was she supposed to impress anyway? Well, that was before she saw Dae Ho. Now she wanted to dress up, style her hair, and behave like a girl that hadn't locked herself up in her own world, who hadn't lost touch with reality. First impressions are important, and my first impression has to be the best. Tifa bit her thumb nervously, her feet dragging her to her closet, where she fumbled around for clothes. Decent clothes. She had a few frilly things that she used to wear in middle school. High school, on the other hand, was the dawn of moody, all-dark, cringe clothes. Thinking about that period still made her grimace. I need to revamp all of this. She lamented. I have no clothes. At least, no clothes pretty enough to put a straight, heart-shaped arrow through Dae Ho's chest. She balled her hands into fists, swung the door open, and yelled. He. The echo of her voice was carried through the entire house. Psst. Psst. Come here, piggy, piggy. That dumb hoe better not be sleeping. Just as Tifa was about to yell again, the urgent footfalls of someone clumsily running rang out across the hallway. However, unlike the normal stride of a human, her mother's had, oddly enough, 2 added thumps. And when she finally came into view, the mystery was solved. Tifa's mother was not walking. She was trotting like an animal, hands and feet slamming on the floor as she struggled to gallop. Oh! Tifa made a very cute expression as she stared at her mother, Minjun. Dog trot up to her, head low and face hidden by her curtain of hair. A cat-like smile developed across Tifa's face. She blinked, tilting her head. You're late. I'm S. I didn't know pigs could talk. I said. I didn't know pigs could talk. Tifa's face darkened. Oink, oink. A sob tore through Minjun's throat as she grunted out the humiliating sounds. Oink, oink. I need money, ASAP. Tifa stared at her nails, wondering if a manicure would add more points to her charm. Her nails looked more like that of a girl than a woman. They were short, clean, and perfectly trimmed. Minyun beat her bottom lip. Don't force me to put a leash on you, again. Tifa crossed her arms, foot tapping impatiently. Last time it was embarrassing enough for the neighbors to call the police, we wouldn't that to happen again, right? You don't want them to know what you did, right? Oink, oink. Minjun hesitantly reached a hand between her cleavage and pulled out a wad of cash. 100,000 KRW. It was all she had left after Tifa took control of the household's finances. Minjun ground her teeth, but didn't utter a word. Except that she did the mistake of letting her grudge and hatred seep out of her eyes. Tifa, naturally, caught that and frowned. I don't like those eyes. I wonder if I should carve them out. Silence. Minjun hunched her shoulders and lowered her head. You deserve punishment, don't you? You agree with me, right, Mum? Oink oink. Ha ha ha. So you do. Tifa clapped her hands animatedly as she bounced her heels up and down. Actually, you know what? I'm in a good mood today. I'm not going to punish you. I'm going to reward you. Minjun cried out, grunting, trembling, and silently seething in her despair. Because she knew. She knew that a reward could be worse than any punishment. Lift your head, pig. Minjun begrudgingly complied and tilted her chin up. The strands of hair parted in an S-curl fringe, exposing her wet, bloodshot eyes. She used to be beautiful. Now all that was left was its ghost on that broken visage. However, that wasn't the only peculiarity about her. In fact, a thin, faded scar ran diagonally across Minjun's face. From her left eyebrow to her right cheek. It was a nasty reminder of what her diabolic daughter could do when Minjun attempted to seize control of the house. Tifa slipped her thumbs inside the waistband of her shorts and tugged everything down. I played with myself earlier. Just a little. But, the bathroom is so far away, and I'm quite tired. So, her underwear slid down her ankles. Why don't you clean me yourself? Surely, a filthy animal such as you will enjoy it. Am I wrong? Minjun stared in horror at the wet, glimmering trails that ran down her pale thighs. Revulsion contorted her face. Her throat burned as bile crept up, but she held it back down. She had to. Tifa sighed, genuinely vexed at her mother. Mom? Don't let me count to 5. Minjun crammed her eyes shut as she, in one rusted, unwilling motion of the neck, tucked her face between her daughter's thighs, and stuck her tongue out. You dirty bitch. Tifa grabbed her by the hair and slammed her face right into her cunt. Make sure to lap everything up. That'll be your lunch. I need a day of rest after coming back from my business trip. Yang-gu sighed. My body really isn't the same as it was during my youth. At his words, I expected Unha to show her support, but I was wrong. She would, occasionally, and not so secretly, glance at me. The earnestness in her gaze was held back by a touch of shyness. She reminded me of a high school girl who didn't know what to make of her budding feelings. Mom, can we eat anything other than meat, like vegetables for once? Sois en plan. I don't want to get fat. Mia, who was next to me, was offended. She scoffed, smirking. You're sick. Meat is the best. Ain't that right, Dae Ho? She winked at me, to which I smiled with an exasperated shake of my head. Mom, let's cook some sirloin steak. Uni, aren't you worried? Sua asked in a condescending tone. Won't it be a problem if your ass keeps getting bigger? Mia turned her nose up, arrogantly. Do you really think my ass looks that big? South American women's asses are twice as big as mine. I kinda wanted to deny that, but she was not wrong. I sensed someone staring at me, so I turned towards the source. Unha seemed deeply bothered by Mia and Sua's conversation, and it could be seen by the way she rubbed her hips while giving me this puppy stare. Don't tell me she's also worried about the size of her butt? Dae Ho. I snapped my eyes back to Mia, who was looking at me with a challenging grin. You're a man, right? A man? How dare you? I held a hand to my chest, insulted. I identify myself as an attack helicopter. Both Mia and Sua stared at me with blank expressions. Yanggu, on the other hand, nearly choked on his chopstick full of rice. I sighed. All right. Yes, I'm a man. You more than anyone else should know this. Then, what do you think about girls with big butts? Be honest. I blinked. Seriously? Whereas Unha would usually intervene and wave off this odd conversation, right now her eyes were trained on me. And in all of this, Yanggu continued eating without a care in the world. Why are you involving him in this anyway? Sua pointed out, holding an accusing chopstick in Mia's direction. Be because he's the only man here. Mia glanced at her father before aptly correcting herself. Around our age. I coughed, immediately garnering both Unha and Mia's attention. I believe, as a man, and as a non-contributing member of society, that, under any circumstance, this question should be regarded under the light of someone more experienced, like Uncle Yanggu. I passed the hot potato to him. Yanggu blinked. Huh? An awkward smile flashed across his face. Aha, I don't know. Talking about women in a sexual light in front of his daughters was not exactly part of his ideal lunch. Honey, what do you think? Unha stared at me, a faint blush on her cheeks. And so the question was right back at me. The problem was that now Yanggu was also paying a lot of attention to what I was about to say. Yeah. No way I was going to choose a side on the matter. I expertly redirected Unha's stare towards Mia, who blinked in surprise, and turned her head to stare at Sua, the source of this chaos. Well played, Mia. Oh, whatever. Sua rolled her eyes. Forget about it. Chapter 29, Do not fall in love with people like me. That same morning, I had my first haircut in this new reality. I've never been fond of Dae Ho's hairstyle. Not to mention, my fringes were growing a little too long for my tastes. The tips started touching my eyes, and I had to constantly move them away. I opted for a simple hairstyle. An undercut with a fade. The hair on top was trimmed and then softened with hair oil. A few curls fell over my forehead, but it'd take a while before they grew back to their original length. Unha and Mia's reactions to it were a sight to behold. Unha did her best not to stare, while Mia openly stared with a suggestive smirk. Perhaps they never thought that Dae Ho could dress up so well, or that he would look so different with a new hairstyle. Well, that was partly due to my workout as well. The results were incredible. My chest, arms, legs, and abs. All the targeted areas had grown stronger and more sculpted. And along with them, my face underwent a glow-up too. Where are you going? Unha asked, gloved hands busy tending to the plants. A faint blush tinted her cheeks in a lovely pink. I was wearing a slim, black shirt that flattered my toned body. Her eyes did their best not to fall any lower than my neckline. A futile struggle. I smiled and pointed at the ball in my arms. Gonna record a new video for my channel. Channel? She blinked, tilting her head in puzzlement. A new tube channel? Yes. I shrugged. It's something Mia and I started. It's doing quite well. A beautiful smile blossomed on her face. That's amazing, Dae Ho. Her full interest was in me rather than my body. What is it about? And what is it called? It's about football. From the bewildered look on her face, I could infer that she had never expected that to be the main theme. I chuckled and continued. And our channel is called Demia TV. We have only one video out at the moment, but the views are steadily rising, which is why we need to pump more out, to strike while the iron is hot. A fire burned in her eyes. I see. She clenched a hand into a fist, pumping it up in determination. I'll make sure to support you. Well, the channel is just a means to an end. Haha, thank you. I dipped my head with an overdramatic wave of my arm. Since I have your blessings, it would be a crime not to give my all and make sure you're properly entertained on those lonely nights when Uncle Yonggu is not at home. The blush on her cheeks intensified a little, her luscious lips puckering into a pout. Don't say that. I apologized. Alright, my bad. Though you can't always be cleaning and working. I said with a warm smile, making my over to her crouched form. I nuzzled her chin with a finger, cocking it up. Then I leaned my head down and planted a kiss on the crown of her head. She froze, stunned. If I had any say about what goes on in this house, you'd be pampered, loved, and taken care of without having to ever lift a finger. Your worth isn't measured in gold or beauty. It's the accumulation of the time and love you gave me, and everyone else. Dae Ho. She leaned into my touch, eyes turning a little watery. The heat on her cheeks spread down to her neck. Her breathing accelerated as she stared at me with an almost predatory haze in her purple eyes. Though, weirdly enough, that look was instantly gone the moment she averted her gaze. Thank you, she muttered. I was left speechless. I speak nothing but the truth, sometimes. She laughed. All right, you gotta go. Don't want to distract you. Though seriously, make sure to rest a bit. There's nothing wrong in being a couch potato, like Mia. I tapped her nose, and the way she blinked and stared at me was so cute and sweet that it was like a full-on injection of sugar straight into my heart. I coughed, schooled my expression, and made my way out. I tugged at the collar of my shirt. Wearing a black one was not a good idea. The sun's glares were intense, and the color absorbed almost all of it. I stared at the ball spinning on my finger. Mia was resting, and I didn't need her for this particular video. It was something I had seen many do in my past life, and there were many that did it in this reality as well. Tutorials. I've never taught anyone how to play football, it was instinctive to me. Not something you could simply teach someone who was not talented. Regardless, I would do my best to be clear and concise when explaining what to do, how to do it, and why to do it. I would start with shooting. Different kinds of shots and the proper positioning for taking them. Then I'd branch out into skills. Flashy skills. The kind you wouldn't be able to perform in a pro match, but still pleasing to watch. The list went on and on. For a while, I had enough content to last me a couple of months, depending on how frequently I released them. As I was walking, lost in thoughts, I barely noticed a bike rounding up the corner and nearly slamming into me. Luckily, I had enough reflex and spatial awareness to avoid the incoming impact by quickly stepping to the side. The woman on the bike promptly halted before she lost her balance. Dae Ho. The surprise in her voice threw me off for a bit before its familiarity dawned on me. Yuhyang. She was panting, pearls of sweat glistening while tracing down her pale yet slightly flushed skin. Her white sundress fluttered. Her hair, tucked under a straw hat, was also teased by the sweeping breeze. Oh, hey there. I greeted her pleasantly. Sorry about that, I was distracted. Yuhi blinked, then her eyes, just like Eunha's, roved over my bulging chest, before they slowly trailed up, drinking in high cheekbones and perfectly styled hair. It's fine. She smiled awkwardly. I was distracted too. And as she said so, she couldn't help but keep staring at the way the black fabric of my shirt clung to my body, outlining my pectorals and my flat, toned belly. I had to admit that buying that shirt was definitely a wise purchase. Both Eunha and Mia shared Yuhi's enthusiasm in undressing me with their eyes. Though Eunha was very subtle about it, for a good reason too. Mia, as per usual, didn't have any inhibitions when it came to showing her appreciation for my body. Yuhi, on the other hand, didn't know what to make of it. She tried to be subtle, then failed, and when she realized that, she hastily averted her gaze. However, her eyes continued stealing glances, bottom lip caught between her teeth. It's hot, right? Yuhi's eyes went wide as she squawked out incoherent noises. I smirked, which prompted the blush on her face to glow even brighter. The weather. I said, laughing a bit. It's very hot, isn't it? Haha. She scratched her cheek. Well, I won't hold you off anymore. I'm sure you have places to be. Send my greetings to Go Bong, and tell him that I'm still waiting for his response. With that being said, I gave her one last smile before I walked past her. However, Dae Ho, bite. Yuhi turned around sharply. I don't have anything to do right now, in fact, I'm going back home. I raised one eyebrow at her. She's dropping some sort of hint here. She stared at the ball in my hand. Are you going to play football? Yes, there's a pitch nearby. That's where I usually hang out for some quick plays. You want to come with me? Can I? Yuhi huffed out a sigh of relief. I'd really like to see you play. Of course. Though I won't be only playing. I shrugged. Which reminded me, I had to contact Tifa after the video was done. We did agree to bounce ideas off of each other, after all. A part of me was really curious as to what she looked like. Women in this world were, on average, prettier than those in my world. What else are you going to do? Yuhi asked as she turned her bike around and paddled forward, until she was right next to me. I continued walking, with Yuhi paddling at a slow pace. I'll explain it to you once we get there. HM. I might even need your help, in fact. Well, actually, not really. I could do everything on my own, though having another set of hands would definitely speed up the process. Oh, how mysterious. Yuhi smiled, bringing one hand up to stop her long tresses from dancing to the breeze's tune. I know, right? I turned to her, a playful glint in my eyes. You're warned though, if you keep hanging out with me, you'll eventually fall in love with me. She tilted her head, smile widening in a secret and earnest way. And what if I do? I bore my eyes into hers, deep and penetrating. Do not fall in love with people like me. I repeated, a little more serious right now. I will take you to museums, and parks, and monuments, and kiss you in every beautiful place, so that you can never go back to them without tasting me like blood in your mouth. I will destroy you in the most beautiful way possible. And when I leave, you'll finally understand why storms are named after people. Chapter 30, Sun Pie. Yuhi stayed quiet throughout the entire journey to the pitch. Okay, I may have exaggerated a little bit by saying that, but it was her fault for giving me ammo when she knew that I was holding a gun. How was I supposed to know that she'd blush so hard, look away, and nearly trip down on the sidewalk? Alright, perhaps I sort of knew what kind of reaction she'd have, but the opportunity to tease her was too good to pass on. Thankfully, the pitch was not far from our meeting point, so we got there in a couple of minutes. Minutes of awkward silence. I saw a bunch of guys already occupying one half of the field from the distance. Good. If they were using all of it, I might have had to challenge them for its ownership. Yuhi climbed down her bike and put it into a bike stand, where she proceeded to lock it for safety. Once she was done, we slipped through a hole in the broken fence and stepped into the field. Yuhi was a bit apprehensive as she did so. Don't worry about it. It's an abandoned football pitch. It has been for many years. I said. Probably a bad way to comfort her. I didn't want her to think that it was fine to sneak into abandoned places, but whatever happened, I'd just roll with it. HM. Is that so? Yuhi had a thoughtful frown on her face. I had to admit that she looked extremely cute. I dropped the ball on the grass, one foot resting on top of it. Have you ever played football, Yuhi? I asked casually. She tapped her chin, frown deepening. I don't think I have. And then she smiled, hands clasped behind her back. And even if I tried, I don't think I'd be any good. Come on now, Dae Ho. Last time, you told me you're quite good. You've got to prove it now. There was a faint blush on her face. Whether it was due to the temperature or something else, I didn't know. Still, I accepted the challenge. Oh, and I will. I said smugly, tugging at the invisible lapels of my invisible jacket. My skills are so good that they'll turn you into a bad girl. That doesn't make sense. Yuhi chuckled behind a hand, cheeks rosy. Why are you in a constant state of blushing? I'm not. She denied, weakly. Ich sterte hier. She stared back at me, her blushing growing a little brighter. Knowing that there was no way she could win this argument, she snapped her head to the side, hiding her face. I'm not. I tickled her side, which prompted her to squeak out a series of indignant and very unladylike noises. Wow. I barely touched you. Yuhi looked at me with faux resentment. Don't do that, Dae Ho. I can't have you looking away when I'm about to bedazzle you. She bit the corner of her lips as she smoothed over her expression. What are you going to show me? I shrugged. What would you like to see? Yuhi walked to the edge of the field and sat down, legs and feet tucked together in a prim and proper way. She took off her straw hat and placed it on her side. Didn't you say you were going to turn me into a bad girl? It seemed as if it had taken a lot of courage from her to say that. Is that what you really want? For someone to turn you into a bad girl? I joked. Dae Ho. Tell me. She blinked. I slid the ball forward. Top left or top right? Yuhi was still a little confused, but answered nonetheless. Top left. The empty goalpost was a bit far from our position. The angle was quite awkward as well, but with this body's physical prowess and my talent, taking that shot was well within the realms of possibility. In fact, I was very confident I could do it. I had been training every day. All right, got you. I took a few steps back, stared at the goalpost while doing mental calculations. Then I stomped the left foot forward, and let my right one slam into the lower edge of the ball. I brought my foot upward, guiding the ball and giving it a side spin. It immediately flew off. Initially, it looked like the ball was off course, flying in a straight path towards the middle of the goalpost, but within a few seconds, its rotation curved it. The trajectory suddenly changed mid-air. And under Yuhi's surprised eyes, the ball sunk into the net. Exactly in the top left corner. The prediction had come true. Wow! She gasped, blinking repeatedly. I nodded. That was all luck. She gave me a weird look. Really? Of course not, you silly moonpea. Moonpea? At her perplexed expression, I had this uncontrollable urge to boop her nose. She's not Unha. My nose booping service was reserved only for her, after all. And Mia, maybe. Are you giving me pet names now? Yuhi huffed, though the pleased smile on her face told me that she liked it. You want me not to? Nah. It's fine. Yuhi turned around as she idly played with a lock of her hair, trying to hide a smile. I should give one to you too. What about Sun Pai? It had a very particular sound, after all. One which reminded me of Japanese animations. Sun Pai? She didn't look convinced. Isn't it fitting? I chuckled. I'm strong and reliable, like the sun. And you're beautiful and pale, like the moon. Pfft. She shook her head. That's cheesy. But you like it. I insisted. Right? Yuhi tried not to smile, but at this point, she was fighting a losing battle. Right. See? We're on the same wavelength. She laughed, fingers over her mouth. I proceeded to jog over to the goalpost and retrieve the ball. When I made my way back, I decided that it was finally time to record the video. Yuhi's POV. It was sunset by the time they were done. The sky was alight with a romantic hue of reds and golds. With the outset of the night, the temperature had dropped a bit. A playful breeze swept through her hair, and while she hastened to stop her tresses from flowing in a wild dance, she happened to steal a glimpse of Dae Ho. He was staring off into the distance, locked in some sort of memory. Just a couple of minutes earlier, he suggested he escorted her back home. Naturally, Yuhi gladly accepted his chivalrous offer. She liked to spend time with him. The video came out really well. She said, breaking the comfortable silence. I'm still surprised you have a new tube channel. Does Gobang know? She was even more surprised by its growing popularity. Seriously, that was out of nowhere. What happened to him in the time they hadn't seen each other for him to grow so exponentially different and mature? The Dae Ho she knew was a goofy boy that always hung out with her brother. But this new Dae Ho, he was amazing, right? Dae Ho didn't look at her. The smile on his face, however, was genuine. It's a good alternative in case all else fails. Yuhi nodded, contemplating the ins and outs of that career choice. I admire you, she said, quietly, for having your life already figured out. Figured out is a big word, Yuhi. Dae Ho turned around, just a little, to anchor her within his sight. Her heart skipped a beat. Success is the result of talent meeting opportunity. Nothing is guaranteed, and as good as you might think I am, I'm not perfect. We can't predict the future, we can prepare for it, but if your foundation is weak, frail, like a house of cards, the slightest wind will blow everything apart. She nodded again, biting her bottom lip. What happened to you, Dae Ho? The question stumped him. She could see it. His deep eyes shone with an emotion she couldn't put a word to. However, the moment he blinked, it was all gone, like a lie. Everyone has asked me that. She kept staring at him, as if doing so, for long enough, would make the answer materialize on his forehead. I've grown up. Is that really it? Yuhi looked like she didn't really believe it, but at the same time she couldn't possibly conceive a different answer other than, growing up. Did you expect me to have gone through a traumatic experience? A breakup? A harsh reality wake-up call? Dae Ho chuckled, the humor in his husky laugh evident. Well, you can say that I just don't want to live in mediocrity. Plain and simple. Is there anything wrong with that? Yuhi shook her head. But everything about you changed. She thought wistfully. Before they knew it, they were in front of a familiar green gate. The sky was gradually darkening. Does it make you uncomfortable? And then Dae Ho surprised her with that question. What do you mean? Yuhi tucked a swaying strand of hair behind her hair, eyes trembling. He stared at her, wondering the best choice of words to convey what he was really thinking. She gave him enough time. Then, does it make you uncomfortable that you can't recognize me? That you can't associate my face, voice, and smile with the one in your memories? She inadvertently looked away. No, it doesn't. Dae Ho didn't take his eyes off her. Yuhi let the gentle breeze ruffle her hair for a while. In fact, she fluttered her eyelashes coyly, struggling to put her feelings into her words. I quite like you this way. She glanced at him, gauging his reaction. Dae Ho stood frozen for a couple of seconds, then he huffed out a sigh and smiled. That makes me happy. Her heart skipped another beat, and then it went on a wild chase, knocking restlessly against her chest. She returned the smile with one of her own. Then, she gulped, a vivid blush spreading across her face. Can I get your contact info? Dae Ho raised one eyebrow at her request. You move quite fast, don't you? He laughed. She shrunk a little, her smile a little shy. Still, she didn't back down. Yes, sure, he said, taking his smartphone out. Let's exchange numbers. And that's exactly what they ended up doing before Dae Ho waved and headed back home. Yuhi's breathing was a little erratic as got inside and scrambled upstairs, towards her bedroom. She hopped on her bed, rolling around while holding her phone. She smiled in a secret way. She didn't register his number as Dae Ho. She registered it as Sun Pai.
Akira here, this is the end of part 2. If you enjoyed the story, we would appreciate if you liked the video. Also, please support the original author for this amazing work. I have put their Patreon and the web novel link in the description. Thank you and have a great day.